Chapter 3879. In an instant, Fang Tai's eyes turned red with jealousy. He had also stayed in the Chiqiao lands for a few months, so he naturally knew how difficult it was to become an ordinary disciple from a worker. However, young Kai was wearing the 7-colored robe, so he had clearly shaken off his status as a worker and become a disciple of the Chiqiao lands. How could this be? The last time he had seen young Kai was only a few days ago. At that time, he had Zhu Zheng's protection, while young Kai had been bullied by Zhu Zheng. He had originally thought that relying on Zhu Zheng would allow him to rest easy, but who would have thought that in the end, he would be implicated and forced to flee for his life? Brother Fang, we've all known each other for a while. Now that I've come here to take your life, I don't want to make things too complicated. Why don't you just stick your neck out and save yourself some pain? Take my life. Fang Tai's expression changed drastically. This Fang only made an unintentional mistake, and you want to take my life? Yang Kai said indifferently, that's what the higher-ups want. I'm also very helpless. Fang Tai looked around and saw that Ma Liu and Jiang Sheng were both glaring at him. He knew that no matter what, he would not be able to escape from the hands of 2 heaven-opening realm masters. All hope was lost, and his face paled as he sent a message. Brother Yang, you and I entered the Chiqiao lands together, and we even had an agreement before. Now that this Fang is in dire straits, Brother Yang, please be magnanimous and let me go. This Fang will be grateful and will definitely repay you in the future. Yang Kai stared at him and said, does Brother Fang really place that agreement of alliance in your eyes? Fang Tai's expression was bitter. He knew that his previous actions were somewhat wrong. When he saw that Zhu Zheng loathed Yang Kai, he had intentionally excluded him. Now, in a mere 2 months, the tables had turned. Now, he had to rely on others to survive. He immediately begged, Brother Yang, this Fang was wrong before. Master Brother Yang, please be magnanimous and don't lower yourself to my level. It was this Fang who was stupid and did not recognize people. Yang Kai raised his hand to stop him. There's no point in you saying this now. Brother Du ordered those 2 brothers to come with me, so they definitely didn't just lead the way for me. Even if I was willing to let you go, those 2 brothers wouldn't let you go. Moreover, why should I let you go? If it was just some previous matters, young Kai was too lazy to care about anything with him. After all, everyone had the instinct to seek fortune and avoid disaster. He had offended Zhu Zheng and wanted to rely on Zhu Zheng. Naturally, he had to draw a clear line between himself and Fang Tai in order to survive. This was a very correct choice. It was just that they had different principles and couldn't make plans together. However, he cooperated with Zhu Zheng and Xiong Yong to frame Fang Tai. This was unforgivable. Even though he didn't know anything about it, if it had succeeded, Fang Tai would have been dead by now. An unintentional mistake was also a life-and-death feud. Moreover, as he said, since Du Rufeng had asked Ma Liu and Jiang Sheng to accompany him, it was impossible for him to just be a lookout. Even if he didn't do anything, Ma Liu and Jiang Sheng would definitely not let Fang Tai go. Reaching out in the void, Yang Kai grasped the black dragon spear in his hand with a dragon roar. He shouted in a deep voice, Fang Tai, give me your life. While speaking, Yang Kai's aura quickly climbed to the limit, and by the time he finished speaking, he had already arrived in front of Fang Tai and thrust his spear forward. Fang Tai was shocked, never having expected Yang Kai to act so decisively, not giving him the slightest time to react. Even though he had been on guard the entire time, when the spear intent was about to reach him, he barely managed to raise his hand and summon a shield-like artifact to block in front of him. With a crisp cracking sound, cracks appeared on the round shield as soon as it appeared. The light that was flowing endlessly on it also quickly dimmed. In merely the time for a single breath, the round shield exploded into pieces, and Fang Tai's face that was filled with terror was revealed behind it. Not far away, Ma Liu and Jiang Sheng, who were watching, couldn't help exchanging a glance, both seeing the shock in each other's eyes. Although they could use such an attack at will with their current strength, with Yang Kai's cultivation, it was absolutely impossible. In other words, in the Emperor realm, Yang Kai's foundation was much stronger than theirs. When he broke through to heaven opening in the future, even if they were both first grade, they might not be his match. The round shield shattered, and the black dragon spear pierced through Fang Tai's shoulder like a hot knife through butter. As blood spurted out, Fang Tai's face was as pale as paper. Yang Kai's face was wooden, and as he withdrew his spear, he kicked out, hitting Fang Tai's waist. An irresistible force was transmitted, and Fang Tai was sent flying like a ragsack, crashing into the barrier of Jiang Sheng's artifact and vomiting blood. Fang Tai's expression was extremely horrified, and Yang Kai's expression was slightly stunned. Speaking of which, this was the first time he had jumped out of the shackles of the universe and come to the 3,000 worlds to fight with someone. Although his opponent was not at the heaven-opening realm, he felt that this Fang Tai was not as strong as he thought. However, this could also be related to the fact that he was injured and had been on the run for so many days. Yang Kai did not know how Fang Tai's injuries had come about, but he guessed that he had fought with someone while escaping from the Chiqiao lands. Since that was the case, there was nothing to say. His figure flickered as Yang Kai charged forward, the black dragon spear turning into a sky full of afterimages that enveloped Fang Tai. Fang Tai's strength was not bad, and he had an endless supply of artifacts, especially those defensive artifacts. Yang Kai did not know where he had obtained them, but he did not feel safe at all. However, under Yang Kai's storm-like attacks, he could only parry and was unable to counterattack. His expression slowly turned to shock, as if he had not expected that under the same cultivation level, he would not be Yang Kai's opponent at all. When the last defensive artifact was shattered, Fang Tai clutched his chest in grief and indignation. Yang Kai, must you be so ruthless? Yang Kai did not speak, simply pointing his spear forward with a solemn look on his face. Fang Tai ground his teeth. You forced me to do this. If this Fang suffers, you can forget about living in peace. Saying so, Fang Tai formed a seal with one hand and his originally weak aura suddenly swelled. At the same time, a profound aura began to spread from his body. Yang Kai's expression became solemn. Just as he felt that this aura was a little familiar, Fang Tai opened his mouth and spat out an ancient seal. This seal looked inconspicuous, but it contained a terrifying power. A Dao seal. Yang Kai's face changed drastically as he thought to himself, no wonder it felt a little familiar. It turned out that he had done this before. Back in the star boundary, Yang Kai had been forced to release his Dao seal and fight a desperate battle with the great demon god. Yang Kai had not expected that outside this world, his first enemy would deal with him in such a manner. How powerful a Dao seal could be when released was something Yang Kai was well aware of, so when he saw the ancient seal turn into a stream of light and rush towards him, Yang Kai immediately retreated. At the same time, he raised his arm slightly and swung it forward, sending the blue dragon spear in his hand flying. The two streams of light collided mid-air, creating a loud bang that shook the heavens and earth. A terrifying shockwave spread out in all directions, causing even the barrier around Jiang Sheng's artifact to ripple. At this moment, Ma Liu rushed over and stood in front of Yang Kai, his fat body like a city wall, blocking the storm in front of him, his palms constantly striking forward to offset the terrifying shockwaves. After a dozen breaths of time, everything slowly stabilized. Yang Kai, who was hiding behind Ma Liu, poked his head out and saw that Fang Tai's burly figure had completely shriveled up, his aura so weak that it seemed he would soon die. He was not as lucky as Yang Kai, nor was he as strong as Yang Kai. After releasing his Dao seal, it had been completely destroyed after colliding with the blue dragon spear. However, this Dao seal was the condensation of his cultivation, so when it was destroyed, his strength would also disappear. Although he had not died at this moment, he would not live for long. Yang Kai was secretly shocked and swore that he would never release his Dao seal unless absolutely necessary. This was simply too dangerous. Junior brother Yang, are you all right? Ma Liu turned around and asked with concern. Yang Kai cupped his fists and said, thanks to big brother's protection, junior brother is fine. It's good that you are fine. Junior brother, you must remember that fighting outside of Qiankuan is different from your previous experiences. The most important thing is to be on guard against this kind of desperate situation. If you are not careful, you will be unlucky. Ma Liu said earnestly. Yang Kai nodded seriously. I will remember. Ma Liu said, it's fine as long as you remember it. Go, take that guy's head and we can go back and report back. We've run too far this time. If we don't hurry back, senior brother won't feel confident. Yang Kai nodded and slowly ran towards Fang Tai. He waved his hand in the air and the blue dragon spear immediately flew back. On the other side, Fang Tai was already gasping for breath. Yang Kai came in front of him and looked down. He saw that Fang Tai's eyes were cloudy, as if he had aged a few thousand years in an instant. Even his body did not have much vitality left. He did not know if he could see clearly, but Fang Tai's mouth squirmed and a low voice came out, "If you kill me, you will not have an easy time." With a swish, the long spear thrust forward and Fang Tai's head flew, but not much blood flowed from the neck. Jiang Sheng flew over at the right time, wrapped the head in a black cloth he had prepared, and directly put it into his space ring, grinning meaningfully as he said, "Success." The order they had received was to assist Yang Kai in retrieving the head of the traitor Fang Tai. Now that everything had been completed, they could naturally return home. Moreover, this time, not only had they managed to befriend Yang Kai in advance, Du Rufeng would certainly reward them handsomely. Turning his head to look at Yang Kai saw that Yang Kai was slightly absent-minded and couldn't help patting him on the shoulder. "Junior brother, do you rarely kill people? You'll get used to it. If you want to survive, you either have to kill or be killed. We also have the protection of the 7 realms, but if you wander outside, you will always have to keep your head tied to your belt. Who knows when you will be killed?" How could Yang Kai rarely kill people? Throughout his cultivation journey, the number of people who had died at his hands was innumerable. The reason he was absent-minded was because after killing Fang Tai, he felt that something was not quite right, but he couldn't quite put his finger on it. Too lazy to explain, Yang Kai simply nodded and said, "What junior brother says is true." Looking at the headless corpse in front of him, Yang Kai thought back to a few months ago when he and this guy were brought to the 7 realms by Duan Hai. Now, they were actually forced to fight to the death. Chapter 3880. Raising his spear, Yang Kai took the space ring from Fang Tai's hand and handed it to Jiang Sheng. "I don't know if there's anything good inside, but since you 2 brothers have accompanied me on this trip, you've worked hard and contributed greatly. Consider this my thanks to you 2 brothers." How could I accept this? Although Jiang Sheng said so, he did not hesitate to accept the space ring and grinned meaningfully. "Then I'll have to thank junior brother." Thinking to himself, junior brother Yang really knows how to conduct himself. No wonder brother Du appreciated him. Yang Kai really had to learn from him in the future. Perhaps he would be able to take advantage of this opportunity to rise. Shooting a meaningful glance at Ma Liu, Yang Kai put away the space ring, not bothering to check what was inside. In any case, no matter what was inside, they would divide it equally. "Things here are done, let's go back," Ma Liu said. Jiang Sheng and Yang Kai naturally had no objections. Although Yang Kai wanted to stay and experience the local customs of this universe world, he was not in the mood at the moment. The 3 immediately shot up into the sky. However, before they could fly far, the sky above their heads suddenly darkened. Ma Liu looked up and asked, "What is it?" As soon as his voice fell, his figure suddenly disappeared, as if he had never appeared. Both Yang Kai and Jiang Sheng were shocked and stopped in their tracks, silently standing back to back as they spread out their divine senses to monitor their surroundings. Jiang Sheng constantly called out Ma Liu's name but received no response. A moment later, Jiang Sheng whispered, "Junior brother Yang, did you see anything just now?" Yang Kai slowly shook his head, "I didn't find anything." Hearing this, Jiang Sheng's heart sank. Not finding anything was the worst. Now that Ma Liu had suddenly disappeared right under their noses, neither he nor Yang Kai had noticed. It was extremely strange. "Let's go." Jiang Sheng no longer hesitated, calling out to Yang Kai before rushing up into the sky at an extremely fast speed. Yang Kai did not hesitate and immediately followed. The next moment, the sky above their heads darkened again. Yang Kai hurriedly looked up and saw something coming down from above. At the same time, Jiang Sheng shouted, "Let's split up." Without waiting for Kai Yang to recover, Jiang Sheng had already fled far away. However, that black thing didn't seem to care about Kai Yang and instead chased after Jiang Sheng. With a flash, Jiang Sheng followed in Ma Liu's footsteps and disappeared without a trace. Yang Kai's scalp went numb, and he felt all the hair on his body stand on end. In that split second, he was able to see the silhouette of the black shadow. It was like an enlarged burlap sack. When the sackcloth bag came down, Jiang Sheng was taken away. Ma Liu must have disappeared in the same way. Being able to easily capture two heaven-opening realm masters, the power of this artifact could be imagined. Yang Kai knew he wouldn't be able to escape, but what shocked him even more was the owner of this artifact. Even now, he still hadn't seen who it was. Standing in the air, Yang Kai looked around before cupping his fists and asking, "Which senior is here?" Chichiao Land Yang Kai respectfully requests senior to show himself. There was no reply, and the sky above them darkened again. Yang Kai, who had been prepared, immediately urged his space principles to escape, but there was an invisible aura that locked onto him, making it impossible for him to escape. His vision darkened, and he instantly felt like he had entered a strange space. Before Kai Yang could adapt, he felt someone pushing against him from the side. Not only that, there was also the sound of punches and kicks coming from the side. Another fierce fist was coming towards him. Yang Kai raised his hand to block and called out, "Brothers, don't fight." The crackling sounds instantly stopped, and the two men cried out at the same time, "Yang Kai?" After calling out, they called out again, "Ma Liu, Jiang Sheng." Ma Liu nodded and said, "Oh, so you guys were brought in as well. I thought someone was trying to ambush me." Jiang Sheng asked, "Who on earth is the one who did this? What is this place?" Yang Kai said, "I didn't see who it was, but this should be the inner space of a secret treasure. When Brother Jiang was taken away, I caught a glimpse of a secret treasure that looked like a sack." Ma Liu said in a low voice, "A sack? Old Jiang, do you know what it is? I've never heard of it." Jiang Sheng slowly shook his head and said in a serious voice, "But to be able to bring us in without anyone noticing, this expert is at least a 4th stage heaven splitter." 4th stage heaven splitter. Yang Kai was surprised. Why did he bring us in? Ma Liu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. How would I know? But he might have settled down in this world, and we disturbed him when we were killing that traitor. Could it be an enemy of our Chichiao land? Yang Kai guessed. I just told him who I was, but he ignored me. Jiang Sheng swallowed his saliva. "Junior brother, don't say any more. Your senior brother is scared to death. Please don't be an enemy of our Chichiao land. Otherwise, none of us will be able to live. It's best if it's like what old Ma said. We accidentally disturbed them and they want to punish us." Ma Liu suddenly called out, Senior, we didn't know Senior was here. We offended you before, please forgive us." Jiang Sheng also hurriedly said, "That's right, Senior. Master, please be magnanimous and don't bother with us. Let us out first. If there's anything, we can talk about it. Junior apologizes to you first." These two didn't care if others could hear them, and begged first. Yang Kai was speechless. After shouting for a long time, there was no response, so the two went to rest. Ma Liu sighed, "I knew it wouldn't be good if we went too far." "It really isn't good." Yang Kai asked, "Do we have any enemies in Chichiao land?" "Never heard of them." Jiang Sheng shook his head, "But us brothers have only been in Chichiao land for 1,000 years. Maybe we really do have enemies. But since Senior only wants to capture and not kill us, he shouldn't do anything to us." Ma Liu nodded, "Old Jiang is right. If he really is an enemy of our Chichiao land, he would have killed us long ago." After comforting themselves, the two finally stopped panicking. They didn't know how long they had been in this cramped space. Suddenly, a ray of light shone in, as if a skylight had opened above them. The three trapped inside didn't hesitate. Almost at the same time, they activated their movement techniques and rushed towards the skylight. In an instant, they broke free of their bindings and appeared in a cave. Ma Liu and Jiang Sheng were obviously of the same mind. As soon as they were free, they immediately looked around. Yang Kai also focused his mind and scanned the area with his divine sense. Soon, the three's gazes were fixed on a short distance in front of them. There stood a thin, middle-aged man with a gloomy face. This man's clothes were plain and unadorned, as if they had been washed many times. His hair was tied up in a simple bun. He held a wooden sword in one hand and a bag in the other. That bag was the sack that Yang Kai caught a glimpse of before. But now it was only the size of a palm, so the man quickly put it away in his sleeve. Needless to say, this was the guy who secretly put the three of them away. It was easy to see the person, but the most frightening thing was not even seeing the person. Ma Liu and Jiang Sheng glanced at each other. The former cupped his fist and said, "Junior Ma Liu of Chiqiao Land greets Senior. May I ask for Senior's name?" It was so sad to be weaker than others. They were captured for no reason and had to politely ask for the other's name. They had to be careful not to anger the other party. The man only lightly snorted and a powerful aura descended from the sky. Yang Kai instantly felt like an entire world was pressing down on him. His bones creaked and his chest was so tight that he almost coughed up blood. It was only by his strong will that he did not crawl down. On the other hand, Ma Liu and Jiang Sheng had higher cultivations and were in a better situation than him, but their expressions were also ugly. This was the first time Yang Kai had seen the difference between the heaven-opening realm and the heaven-opening realm. Ma Liu and Jiang Sheng were both in the heaven-opening realm, but the other party was at least in the heaven-opening realm. Just a cold snort was enough to make Ma Liu and Jiang Sheng's brother and Jiang Sheng unable to bear it. If they fought, how could they be his match? He could probably casually kill the two of them. "You're all from Chiqiao Land?" The man swept his gaze over the three of them and slowly withdrew his aura, allowing Yang Kai and the others to breathe a sigh of relief. Ma Liu's face was filled with shock as he cupped his fists, reporting to Senior, "The three of us are disciples of Chiqiao Land." "Very good." The man nodded. "I was just worried that I wouldn't be able to find Chiqiao Land, but you delivered yourself to me." Once these words were said, the three's expressions changed greatly. These words did not sound like good words. This guy clearly had a grudge with Chiqiao Land. Indeed, good things did not come true, but bad things did. Previously, the three of them had been guessing whether this person had a grudge with Chiqiao Land, but now, it had become true. Ma Liu anxiously said, "Senior, the three of us are only ordinary disciples of Chiqiao Land. If you really have a grudge with Chiqiao Land, you can go find the venerables and heavenly monarchs. It has nothing to do with us. Wearing this robe is related to you." The man coldly snorted. Yang Kai almost coughed up blood when he heard this. He had only worn this robe for a short period of time, 10 days at most. It was different from Ma Liu and Jiang Sheng. Did this count as him suffering an unexpected calamity? "As for your venerables and heavenly monarchs, this king will find them, but now is not the time." After the man finished speaking, he extended his hand and tossed out the burlap sack. Yang Kai did not even have time to react before his vision turned black. Needless to say, he was once again caught in the man's pocket. Ma Liu and Jiang Sheng clearly understood that they were in a bad situation. After a brief discussion, they decided to make the first move and try to break open the secret treasure from the inside to see if they could escape. However, it would have been fine if the two of them did not make a move. As soon as they did, the rampant energy surged out, causing the three of them to be covered in dirt. Yang Kai was even almost injured. Helplessly, the two of them could only give up and plead inside the sack. Unfortunately, they did not get any response. They did not know if the man did not care or if he could not hear them. Chapter 3881. In the darkness, they didn't know how many days the three of them had been in the bag. Suddenly, the skylight above their heads opened again, but it only took a moment for it to close again. It was so fast that the three of them didn't even have time to react. Yang Kai was surprised. "What does he mean?" Ma Liu said, "I don't know. Junior brother, did you feel anything wrong?" Yang Kai shook his head. "No." "Where's old Jiang?" Ma Liu asked again, but he didn't get a response. After asking several times, he suddenly realized, old Jiang is gone. Yang Kai was also surprised. He quickly looked to the side and found that Jiang Sheng was indeed gone. Combined with the abnormality just now, how could he not know that Jiang Sheng had been taken out by the other party? Ma Liu couldn't help but panic. Why did he take old Jiang out? "Brother, don't worry. Since that senior didn't take our lives, I'm afraid he has some ulterior motives. When brother Jiang comes back, we can ask him." Although Yang Kai said so, he couldn't help but worry about whether Jiang Sheng could come back alive. From the words of the middle-aged man before, it was not difficult to infer that he had a grudge with Chichiao Land. Now that the three of them had fallen into his hands, they couldn't escape, and they couldn't fight back. They were at his mercy. Ma Liu obviously thought of this and couldn't help but feel a little pessimistic. Even if Yang Kai comforted him, he couldn't cheer up. He secretly regretted taking this job. He thought it was a good opportunity to rise, but who knew that he would be in prison with an uncertain future. Now that Jiang Sheng was gone, the space inside the bag wasn't so cramped. Ma Liu silently lamented to himself for a while. Yang Kai's divine sense swept the bag, trying to find a flaw in it to see if there was a way to escape, but unfortunately, no matter how hard he searched, he couldn't find anything. After a few more days, another ray of light came from the darkness. This time, the situation was exactly the same as a few days ago. The bag was opened and closed, so fast that Yang Kai didn't even have time to react. When darkness fell again, Yang Kai clearly felt that Ma Liu, who had been squeezing him, had disappeared. He understood that Ma Liu had also been taken out, and now he was the only one left in the bag. Jiang Sheng was not released, so he was afraid that he was in danger. Now that even Ma Liu was taken out, the possibility of him coming back was not high. Yang Kai suddenly became anxious. Over the past few days, Yang Kai had been quietly looking for a flaw in this artifact, but unfortunately, he hadn't found anything. The interior of this artifact had a self-contained space that could accommodate living creatures, so it was obviously extraordinary. However, the size of this space was a bit strange, as if it could be big or small. It could fit one person or three, but whether it was one or three, it was extremely crowded, as if there was a soft barrier surrounding this space. Previously, Jiang Sheng and Ma Liu had tried to break through the restraints of this bag artifact, but unfortunately, they had failed. With two heaven-opening boundary cultivators unable to do so, Yang Kai knew that even if he used his full strength, he might not be able to escape. He just didn't know if there was a limit to the space inside this bag, or if it could burst. However, now that things had gotten to this point, Yang Kai could only try everything he could. If it could burst, that would be best, but if it couldn't, then it wouldn't be too late to think of another way. It was better than being trapped here and waiting for death. Thinking so, Yang Kai no longer hesitated, taking a deep breath and shouting, "Dragon transformation." As a loud dragon roar rang out, a golden light burst from the darkness and a golden dragon head flashed, submerging into Yang Kai's body. Accompanied by a series of crackling sounds, Yang Kai's figure suddenly expanded. 10 meters, 30 meters, 50 meters, 1,000 meters. The soft barrier around him tightly bound Yang Kai's massive body, as if invisible ropes were tightening around him. Yang Kai was on the verge of coughing up blood, feeling extremely uncomfortable, as if he would explode at any moment. Forcefully enduring this discomfort, Yang Kai's 1,000-meter body expanded once more. Catcher, catcher. His bones creaked and Yang Kai breathed out hot air from his nostrils, the blood in his chest and abdomen roiling, his throat filled with the taste of blood. Even after reaching the limit of 2,000 meters, the bag artifact showed no signs of bursting, so Yang Kai knew that his attempt had failed. Unwilling to give up, Yang Kai reached out and grasped the blue dragon spear in his hand. Space principles fluctuated, and as he thrust the spear forward, a massive black dot appeared at the tip of the spear. Collapse, berserk energy rampaged, and in this sealed space, the scattered energy could not be released, turning into a barrage of attacks that bounced back onto Yang Kai's body. Yang Kai, who was already suffering from the surrounding pressure, could no longer bear it and coughed up a mouthful of blood. His entire body was like a deflated balloon, his massive body rapidly shrinking as his aura weakened. Yang Kai inwardly clenched his teeth. This really wasn't going to work. He didn't know what this bag artifact was, but he was completely helpless against it. His strength was still too low. If he was also at the heaven-splitting realm, he might be able to force his way out of here. However, advancing to the heaven-splitting realm was extremely difficult. First, one had to condense the power of yin, yang, and 5 elements in order to create a new world within one's body. Yang Kai's luck had been good, as he had obtained the immortal tree and refined it, allowing him to condense the power of the wood element. This was an excellent start. But having a good start didn't mean he would be able to reach the heaven-splitting realm. If he wanted to accomplish his goal, he still had to search for those high-grade materials. But how could high-grade materials be so easy to find? Yang Kai didn't know when he would be able to advance to the heaven-splitting realm, nor did he know when he would be able to find the world tree to repair his shattered star boundary. After letting his thoughts wander for a while, his chaotic aura gradually stabilized. Since he couldn't escape, he could only wait and see. Secretly praying that Jiang Sheng and Ma Liu were safe, Yang Kai sat down cross-legged and began to adjust his breathing. A few more days passed like this, and when the window above his head opened for the third time, Yang Kai was no longer surprised. An irresistible force caught him, and by the time he came back to his senses, he was no longer in that small space, but in the cave from before. The middle-aged man was standing in front of him. At this moment, his face was extremely gloomy, and Yang Kai didn't know what he had encountered that made him unhappy. In any case, he didn't seem to be in a good mood. There was a strange smell in the air, one that he couldn't quite put his finger on, and there was also the smell of blood. Yang Kai frowned and looked around, his gaze suddenly coming to a stop on one side of the cave. There were two corpses lying on the ground, one fat and one thin, wearing 7-colored robes. Although he couldn't see their faces clearly due to the angle, Yang Kai could still tell at a glance that these two were Ma Liu and Jiang Sheng, who had been captured before him. He didn't know what had happened to them, but although their corpses were still intact, they had long since lost their vitality. Yang Kai's heart sank. Although he had long since guessed that these two cheap brothers wouldn't have a good end, seeing this scene with his own eyes, he couldn't help feeling a little sad. "Boy, what's your name?" the man suddenly asked. Yang Kai didn't want to say it, but he had no choice but to say it. In fact, he had already said it before, but the man probably didn't take it to heart. The man sneered, "You're much braver than that fat man. I hope your luck can be as good as his." Yang Kai sighed, "Senior, with your strength, if you want to kill us, it will be as easy as lifting a finger. Why torture my two brothers?" At this time, he also noticed that before Ma Liu and Jiang Sheng died, they should have suffered some kind of inhumane torture. The smell of blood in the cave was the blood that flowed out of their 7 orifices. The man snorted, "This king didn't torture them, but this king has a plan that needs their cooperation. Unfortunately, they don't have this life." Yang Kai looked up, "I don't know what Senior's plan is, but it requires their lives to cooperate." The man looked at him with a strange expression. "Do you want to try? Can I refuse?" Yang Kai looked at him seriously. The man shook his head, "You can't refuse." "Then it's fine. Since I can't refuse, then I can only cooperate. But before that, I would like to ask Senior to explain to me how I can cooperate. Senior probably doesn't want to see me follow in the footsteps of my two brothers. If that really happens, you won't be able to find other disciples of the 7 Openings land in a short time." The man nodded slightly. "You're right, you're quite interesting. I didn't expect that there would be someone like you in the 7 Openings land." Yang Kai sniffled, "Actually, I'm not really from the 7 Openings land. I've only been there for less than half a year." The man sneered, "Do you think this king will believe you?" Yang Kai shrugged, "That's the truth, it doesn't matter if Senior believes it or not. Please tell me about the plan. If possible, I will do my best to cooperate. After all, if I can live, I don't want to die. Whether you die or not is not up to you. It depends on whether you have the ability to survive." As he said this, he flipped his hand and a delicate wooden box suddenly appeared in his hand. The box was only the size of a palm and was sealed, but there was a clear aura of life coming from the box. This undoubtedly meant that there was a living thing in the box. The man didn't waste any words and directly opened the box and handed it to Yang Kai. "Swallow it." Yang Kai looked at him suspiciously, then took the box and looked down. His scalp went numb. He saw that inside the box, there was a black centipede the size of a thumb quietly lying there. Although he didn't know what this thing was, anyone could see that it wasn't anything good. If he really swallowed it, who knew what would happen to him? At this moment, Yang Kai didn't know how Ma Liu and Jiang Sheng died. They were clearly tortured to death after swallowing this centipede. Yang Kai swallowed hard and looked up at the man. "What does Senior mean?" The man said, swallow it. If you don't die, your life and death will be in this king's hands. When the time comes, this king will need you to do something. If you die, then there's nothing to say. Chapter 3882. Is Senior doing this just to control me? Yongkai raised his eyebrows. That's right. Then there's no need to go through so much trouble. Senior only needs to plant a soul brand in my knowledge sea, and the same effect will naturally occur, the man sneered. If you hadn't condensed your own Dao seal, this would indeed be a good method, but since you have one, as long as it isn't destroyed, you can naturally find a way to escape this king's control. Yongkai was stunned when he heard this. This was the first time he had heard of such a thing. Back in the star boundary, it was too easy to control someone. As long as one was strong enough, one could brand their knowledge sea with their soul brand and naturally control everything. How could this method, which had worked 100 times over, not work in the outside world? Thinking about it carefully, Yongkai suddenly understood. When he condensed his Dao seal, Yongkai clearly remembered that he had condensed all of his strength into his Dao seal. In other words, for someone like him, the Dao seal was his foundation. If he wanted to completely control someone, he could only start with the Dao seal. Simply starting with the soul was not enough. However, looking at the fates of Ma Liu and Jiang Sheng, Yongkai's heart was filled with apprehension. Who knew whether or not he would be sent to the underworld to reunite with his two cheap senior brothers after swallowing this centipede? Even heaven-opening realm masters couldn't resist it, so how could he? He wanted to say something to stall for time, but the man didn't give him a chance. His big hand reached out and grabbed his chin, forcing his mouth open. His other hand picked up the centipede and stuffed it directly into his mouth. Then, with a light lift of his hand, Yongkai swallowed the centipede into his stomach, not even giving him a chance to resist. It was only at this moment that Yongkai realized the gap between him and his opponent. A burning sensation flowed down his throat and into his stomach, and Yongkai staggered back a few steps. He reached into his mouth, wanting to pull the centipede out, but how could he pull it out? Under his perception, the originally motionless centipede in the box became extremely active after entering his stomach, turning into a mass of pure energy that rampaged through his body. An indescribable pain instantly enveloped Yongkai, causing him to roar, his eyes bulging. The man retreated to the side and coldly watched, his expression indifferent. He had no intention of helping at all, as if his life depended on Yongkai's own fortune. In the cave, Yongkai's painful roars continued. He had never experienced such unbearable torture. His body alternated between hot and cold. When it was hot, it felt like his entire body was on fire, and when it was cold, his entire body would emit cold chi, causing him to shiver uncontrollably. As the hot and cold alternated, his life force dropped at a speed visible to the naked eye. A dim light flashed in the man's eyes. Although he had already expected this, seeing Yongkai's performance so poor, he couldn't help feeling disappointed. But this was understandable. After all, the previous two first-grade heaven splitters hadn't been able to survive and had been tortured to death. How could a brat who had just condensed a Dao seal create a miracle? However, if he couldn't find a suitable chess piece, he wouldn't be able to carry out the next step of his plan. He didn't know when he would be able to catch the disciples of the Chichiao lands again. In just half an incense stick's worth of time, Yongkai was only breathing in and out. Blood was flowing out of his 7 orifices, and his miserable appearance was exactly the same as the dead Ma Liu and Jiang Sheng. His vitality had also fallen to rock bottom, and in a moment, his soul would scatter. The man let out a long sigh and turned to walk out of the cave. Looking into the distance, the flames of vengeance burned in his eyes. After a long time, the man walked back into the cave and went straight to Yongkai's side. Looking down, he saw Yongkai's body curled up, covered in a thick layer of frost. Even his eyebrows and hair were snow-white. After sizing him up, the man couldn't help but exclaim softly. A trace of surprise flashed through his eyes because he noticed that the young man who had been frozen into a popsicle was actually still alive. Although the young man's vitality had fallen to the limit, it still hadn't been cut off. He couldn't help but click his tongue in wonder. Logically speaking, after such a long time had passed, it was impossible for the young man before him to survive even if he had 10 lives. However, in reality, he was still alive. Feeling strange, the man carefully examined him. His gaze was quickly attracted by the blood flowing out of young Kai's 7 orifices. This blood was golden, and the man could clearly feel a surging vitality coming from it. Reaching out a finger and dipping it in the golden blood, he placed it under his nose and gently smelled it. The man paled. Dragon blood. When he looked at young Kai again, the look in the man's eyes changed. He didn't expect that there would be a dragon vein among the disciples of the 7 possibilities lands and that he would coincidentally be able to capture it. However, this would explain why this boy's cultivation was clearly not high, but he was still struggling at death's door. The vitality of a dragon bloodline had always been strong, so it wasn't surprising that he could persist for so long. His expression constantly changing, the man considered cutting the weeds and eliminating the roots to prevent future trouble, but thinking of his deep blood feud, he couldn't bring himself to do so. It was not easy to capture a disciple from the 7 openings land, and because of some special reasons, he didn't dare to get too close to the 7 openings land. After hiding in this universe world for so many years, Ma Liu and the others had finally arrived. The first 2 were too weak and had died to the flying blackback centipede's poison, but this young boy might become a useful chess piece. Of course, if he couldn't hold on and was poisoned to death, that was just his bad luck. Making up his mind, the man calmly observed the situation. Time passed little by little. Young Kai remained unconscious on the ground, in a state of near death. That weak vitality had never been cut off, allowing him to struggle at death's door under the intense poison. The man had been quietly observing from the side, but when young Kai survived for 3 days, he couldn't help but be shocked. When he sensed that young Kai was still alive after 5 days, he was pleasantly surprised. It had to be known that the previous 2 first-grade heavenly splitters had only lasted 2.5 days at most. After a full 7 days, young Kai's weak vitality suddenly began to recover, and the various abnormal reactions from swallowing the flying blackback centipede also began to fade. Slowly, his vitality became more and more vigorous, as if a spark of fire had ignited a field. At a certain moment, young Kai suddenly opened his eyes, a look of lingering fear on his face as he gasped for breath. Although he had been unconscious for these 7 days, with his strength reaching this level, even in an unconscious state, he was still able to maintain a trace of clarity. When he was unconscious, he didn't know the situation, but when he woke up, he could naturally remember everything. He secretly praised himself for being able to escape death this time. He didn't know what kind of strange creature the centipede he had swallowed was, but its intense poison was actually able to rapidly consume his vitality. If his vitality wasn't strong enough, he would have definitely been poisoned to death. The reason he had been able to survive was because of his dragon bloodline, which made his vitality much more vigorous than ordinary people's, and also because of his wood element strength. Wood element strength was condensed from the essence of the immortal tree, and although he had lost the immortal tree's ability to bring the dead back to life, it had greatly enriched his vitality. It was also by relying on wood element strength that he was able to maintain that last bit of vitality. At this moment, young Kai could clearly feel that there was a centipede-shaped mark on his Dao seal. This mark seemed to be alive yet not, and was extremely strange. The mark wrapped around his Dao seal and didn't hinder him, but young Kai didn't doubt that as long as this man made the slightest move, his Dao seal would be destroyed in an instant and his soul would return to the underworld. Smiling bitterly in his heart, young Kai's life and death were really in the hands of this man. If this man wanted him to, he wouldn't even have the strength to resist. Good, very good. Seeing young Kai open his eyes, the man's face was full of surprise and he actually grinned. He reached out his hand to help young Kai up and affectionately patted him on the shoulder. "Boy, you really didn't let this king down." He spoke as if he had been very optimistic about young Kai before. Although young Kai was awake, after suffering such torture, he was now extremely weak and didn't even have the strength to reply. Thinking about how his life and death would be out of his control in the future, how could he be in the mood to agree with this man? He just casually grunted. The man didn't mind and just smiled. "Boy, serve this king well. After this king has taken his revenge, he will definitely set you free. At that time, if you are willing, you can follow this king and call the wind and summon the rain." Isn't that better than being a disciple of the Chichao lands? Yang Kai rolled his eyes in his heart. Although he didn't know what kind of enmity this guy had with the Chichao lands, if he wanted to use him for revenge, he would definitely be in danger. If something went wrong, he would be implicated. What good would that be? He didn't dare to express his thoughts and just slightly cupped his hands. This boy doesn't have any great ambitions. I only hope that Senior can fulfill his wish in the future and fulfill his promise today and set this boy free. The man coldly snorted. Of course this king will keep his promise. But boy, could it be that you don't want to give up your identity as a disciple of the Chichao lands? Yang Kai coughed a few times and said weakly, Senior must be joking. This boy hasn't been in the Chichao lands for long. It doesn't matter whether I am a disciple or not. The man looked at him suspiciously and found that he didn't seem to have any intention of lying. He couldn't help but nod, so that's how it is. It seems that the Chichao lands doesn't treat you as one of their own. Yang Kai frowned. What does Senior mean? The man sneered. If they treated you as one of their own, why would they harm you? Harm me? Yang Kai didn't understand. Senior, if you have something to say, you can just say it. This junior doesn't understand what you are saying. The man said, who was that guy you killed before? Yang Kai didn't know why he was suddenly asked about the person he killed, but he still answered honestly. He was an errand boy from the Chichao lands. His name was Fang Tai. He escaped from the Chichao lands and this boy was ordered to kill him. What about these two? The man pointed at the corpses of Ma Liu and Jiang Sheng. These two senior brothers are here under orders to protect me. The man laughed strangely. Protect you? I don't think so. They were probably here to spy on you. Chapter 3883. So what? Yang Kai frowned. For better or worse, Ma Liu and Jiang Sheng were both heaven-opening realm cultivators, so Du Rufeng sending them to protect Yang Kai was truly overkill. Yang Kai himself was well aware that although it was called protection, it was more like surveillance. The man chuckled. When you were killing Fang Tai, didn't you feel that something was wrong? What's wrong? Yang Kai became more and more confused and impatiently said, what does Senior want to say? Please speak frankly. Let me show you something first. Saying so, the man suddenly formed a seal with one hand and his thumb slowly pressed down on Yang Kai's forehead. Yang Kai instinctively wanted to dodge, but when he thought about how his life was in the other party's hands and how he couldn't resist if the other party really wanted to do something to him, he simply let it be. The next moment, the man's thumb pressed down on Yang Kai's forehead and an invisible force surged out. Yang Kai's entire body swayed, as if his soul had left his body, and his vision suddenly stretched back. This feeling was very strange. He was clearly standing in the same place, but he could see his back. When he looked up, Yang Kai's face couldn't help but change, because he could see a faint layer of black qi on the surface of his body. This black qi was like a cloud, enveloping his body. Yang Kai was bewildered. He had never noticed this before. Obviously, this was the work of the man's secret technique, allowing him to see something hidden. The man chuckled and slowly withdrew his hand. Yang Kai immediately returned to his normal state and asked in surprise, what was that? Raising his hand in front of his face, he couldn't see anything. Using his divine sense to scan his body, he didn't find anything wrong, as if the black qi didn't exist at all. However, what he saw just now was definitely not an illusion. That Fang Tai probably has some sort of background. The man lightly snorted. An expert placed a seal on his body. If anyone kills him, the seal will activate and leave a mark on the murderer's body. This mark is very well hidden, and unless one is much stronger than that expert, it's impossible to discover it. The reason this king knows is because I saw you kill Fang Tai with my own eyes. Seal, mark. Yang Kai was dumbfounded. The man chuckled. If you appear in front of that expert in the future, he will know that you killed his junior. How could he let you off so easily? After a pause, he continued, with the Chichao land's ability, why would they need to go through so much trouble to kill a traitor? Why, you should think about it. Yang Kai's expression changed as many thoughts flashed through his mind. Soon, he grasped the crux of the matter and asked, the Chichao land already knew that Fang Tai had a seal placed on him by that expert. The man chuckled. This king didn't say that, but it's most likely so. That expert doesn't want to provoke him, so he found a scapegoat and let you kill Fang Tai. After that, he just has to find a way to get rid of you and everything will be fine. Yang Kai suddenly understood and muttered, no wonder, he had been a little suspicious before. How could a mere servant like Fang Tai escape from the Chiqiao Land's heavy spirit array? He originally thought that Du Rufeng deliberately let Fang Tai go to create an opportunity for him to perform meritorious deeds. Now it seemed that deliberately letting Fang Tai go wasn't wrong, but not for him to perform meritorious deeds. He just didn't want Fang Tai to die in the Chiqiao Land so that he wouldn't be investigated in the future. No wonder I was promoted to a disciple of the Chiqiao Land so easily. It turns out that it wasn't because Du Rufeng appreciated me but because I was used as a scapegoat. Yang Kai didn't doubt the words of the man in front of him. From his standpoint, Du Rufeng was already in control of Yang Kai's life and death, so there was no need to deceive him about this matter. Moreover, what Yang Kai saw with his own eyes couldn't be wrong. Understanding all this, Yang Kai secretly gritted his teeth. Damn you, Du Rufeng. I was the one who helped you collect the Scarlet Heaven Golden Flame, but in the end, you're the one who set me up. It turns out that all those favors and promotions were just a pretense. Although Yang Kai didn't have a sense of belonging to the Chiqiao Land and didn't feel any gratitude towards Du Rufeng, he couldn't help feeling a little annoyed at being used like this. Suddenly, Yang Kai recalled that when he was in Earth protecting Venerable Duanhai's miniature universe, Fang Tai had taken out a token and said that it was given to him by a senior from the Black River realm. Presumably, the seal on Fang Tai's body was placed by that senior from the Black River realm. Although the universe was vast and he might not have the opportunity to meet that senior from the Black River realm in the future, he still had to be prepared. Perhaps one day, he really would run into that senior. If that really happened, he might not even know how he died, so Yang Kai couldn't help cupping his fists and asking, Senior, how do I get rid of this seal? The man smiled and said, unless one's strength surpasses that of the person who placed this seal, there is no way to get rid of it. Even Senior can't do anything. Not to mention whether this king has the ability to do so. Even if I did, why would this king help you? There was nothing wrong with these words. Yang Kai and this man in front of him were neither relatives nor friends. To put it bluntly, he was now this man's subordinate, so why would this man spend so much effort to help him get rid of this seal? The man continued, but you can rest assured, as long as you can help this king get his revenge, this king will satisfy you at the time. Yang Kai gritted his teeth and said, if he is heartless, then so be it. If Senior needs anything in the future, please don't hesitate to tell me. Very good. The man laughed heartily. Although with the flying heavens blackback centipede holding him back, Kai Yang definitely wouldn't have any thoughts of betrayal, but now that Kai Yang had taken the initiative to help, he was naturally happy to see this. If not for this, why would he even bother talking to Kai Yang about these things? By the way, I haven't asked for Senior's name yet. Yang Kai cupped his fists and asked. This king's surname is Shu. The man replied lightly. What kind of enmity does Senior Shu have with Chiqiao Land? Yang Kai asked curiously. Senior Shu coldly snorted, I don't need you to know, don't ask, just do your own thing. Then what does Senior Shu want me to do? My cultivation is low, I'm afraid I won't be able to help Senior Shu much. If I mess up Senior Shu's plans, then I'll die 1,000 deaths. Senior Shu laughed cruelly, you'll be able to help me while wearing this rainbow robe. You've just received this king's secret technique, so you should rest for 2 days. After 2 days, this king will tell you more in detail. Since Senior Shu said so, there was nothing Yang Kai could do. Although he was very curious, it wasn't good to ask again. He cupped his fists and said, Senior Shu, this junior has a presumptuous request. Senior Shu said lightly, speak. Yang Kai pointed to the side and said, I want to bury their bodies. Senior Shu looked at him coldly, you're very affectionate and righteous. Yang Kai shook his head, these two were only ordered to supervise me, they probably didn't know anything. Moreover, they've taken care of me a lot along the way. Now that they're dead, it's time to bury them. Do as you wish. Senior Shu didn't seem too interested in Yang Kai's kindness. After saying this, he flicked his sleeves and left the cave. He wasn't afraid that young Kai would escape, and he quickly disappeared. Kai Yang let out a long sigh, his face filled with dejection. Ever since he came to this world, everything seemed to be going wrong. First, he was brought to the Kikichiao land to be some kind of odd job worker. After a few days of good work, he was unexpectedly involved in this kind of grudge. Now, his life and death were controlled by Senior Shu, and he had become a chess piece in his hands. Although he didn't know how Senior Shu was going to take revenge, how could he have a good end if he got involved in something a fourth-stage heaven-opening expert was plotting? If he didn't think of a way, he might really die young. The only thing he could rejoice about was that he was still useful to Senior Shu, so he wouldn't be in any danger for the time being. However, the Chichiao land was a bit difficult to deal with. Since Senior Shu wanted to use him, he definitely wanted him to return to the Chichiao land. How would he explain the deaths of Ma Liu and Jiang Sheng? 2 Grade 1 sky splitters had died, but he had returned in one piece. This was a bit unreasonable. His head hurt from thinking about it, so he simply stopped thinking about it. Yang Kai walked over to the bodies of Ma Liu and Jiang Sheng and sighed, "You two, being able to travel together, you won't be lonely. Remember to bless junior brother and turn misfortune into blessings." Towards these 2 cheap brothers, Yang Kai didn't have a bad impression. Just as he had said to Senior Shu before, Ma Liu and Jiang Sheng definitely didn't know anything about the arrangements of the Chichiao land. At most, they had been ordered to supervise him and ensure that Fang Tai died at his hands. Along the way, the 2 of them had been really good to him. Now that they had died at Senior Shu's hands, Yang Kai didn't have the ability to avenge them, so he could only take care of their funerals. After bringing the 2 corpses out of the cave, they found a place with good feng shui and dug 2 large pits to properly bury the 2 corpses. Of course, Yang Kai definitely left behind their space rings. Not only did he leave behind 2 space rings, but he also left behind Fang Tai's. Instead of returning to the cave, Yang Kai flew directly to a nearby mountain peak, sat down cross-legged on a boulder, and began inspecting the contents of the space rings. After inspecting them, Yang Kai found that Ma Liu and Jiang Sheng were extremely poor. Besides some artifacts, there were only a few hundred heaven-opening pills in their space rings. Although a few hundred heaven-opening pills was a huge number for a laborer, it was definitely not worth mentioning for a heaven-opening realm cultivator. These 2 were first-stage heaven-opening realm cultivators, but with so little savings, it was obvious that they weren't doing very well in the Chichiao land. This was also not surprising. After reaching the heaven-opening realm, they would have to find ways to improve their strength. In order to do so, they would have to consume a large number of heaven-opening pills over a long period of time. Yang Kai estimated that most of the heaven-opening pills had already been consumed, so having a few hundred left was already quite good. The quality of these artifacts wasn't very good either, so Yang Kai didn't take anything else, only taking the heaven-opening pills. He threw away the rest along with the 2 space rings to prevent others from discovering them in the future. Chapter 3884. There was no need to mention Fang Tai's space ring. Besides some specialties he had brought out from his own universe world, there were only a dozen or so heaven-opening pills. Yang Kai didn't even put them in his eyes. The only thing that caught his attention was a jade token. This jade token was only the size of his palm and was crystal clear without any impurities. Inside it, there was a small fish-like thing swimming back and forth, as if it was alive. This thing was what Fang Tai had taken out to show Duan Hai before and was also the token given to him by the senior from the Black River realm. Yang Kai didn't know what this token was for and wanted to throw it away, but after thinking about it, he carefully put it away, not daring to put it into his space ring but instead tossed it into the sealed world bead. Presumably, with the sealed world bead's unique ability, the Black River realm's great master had no way to track down this token. Turning his head and looking around, Yang Kai found that the mountain wilderness was quiet. Sweeping the area with his divine sense, Yang Kai couldn't find any trace of Old Man Shu, nor did he know where he had gone. There was no need to think about running away though. Since the other party had dared to leave him here, obviously they weren't afraid he would run away. Sitting down cross-legged, Yang Kai looked inside his body and soon saw the centipede mark on the Dao seal on his spine. This mark seemed to have a life of its own, wrapping around the entire Dao seal. Yang Kai tried to push his Saint Chi but found no hindrance. He then added a little more strength to attack the centipede mark, but the centipede mark immediately tightened around the Dao seal. In an instant, Yang Kai felt like his body was about to be crushed, causing him to break out in a cold sweat and stop his attempts. However, Yang Kai was certain that there was no way he could get rid of this centipede mark with his current strength. Old Man Shu was at least a 4th-grade heaven-opening cultivator and had used such a strange treasure to subdue him. It wouldn't be easy to get rid of it. Cursing his bad luck, Yang Kai obediently began to restore himself. The centipede had consumed too much of his Saint Chi before, so although his life was not in danger, he was still very weak. 3 days later, Yang Kai, who was meditating, suddenly noticed something was wrong. When he opened his eyes, he saw Old Man Shu standing in front of him, looking at him quietly. Yang Kai quickly got up. Old Man Shu. Old Man Shu nodded and said lightly, "You're quite honest. With your strength, if you tried to forcibly break through the shackles of the flying centipede, I'm afraid you would have already died." Yang Kai's Old Man Shu's centipede's Old Man's is to help ask, Old Man Shu's names is to Yang's to him to be to asks to help. After being subdued by Old Man Shu that day, Old Man Shu disappeared. Yang Kai didn't have time to ask about it, but he knew that Old Man Shu wouldn't have spent so much effort just to amuse himself. What's more, this Old Man Shu had a grudge with the 7 Possibilities lands, so he was definitely here to seek revenge. "I want you to bring me into Chichiao land." Yang mind. Yang eyes and Yang head is. Yang Li too. By Yang was. So and to be. Of course. But now that Ma Liu and Jiang Sheng were dead, how would he explain himself if he went back alone? Old Man Shu seemed to know what he was thinking. He said lightly, "Don't worry. When you go back, you just have to say you encountered a void beast and those 2 were accidentally eaten by it." Yang Kai was speechless. How could he get away with such a simple excuse? If the Kikichiao found out he was lying, he would be in deep trouble. This Old Man Shu obviously didn't care about his safety. But Old Man Shu, how can I bring you into the Chichiao? Yang Kai looked troubled. The Chichiao is surrounded by layers of formations. It's fine for me to go back alone, but if I bring another person with me, I'm afraid I won't be able to get through. We'll definitely be discovered. Old Man Shu casually tossed something to him. Yang Kai caught it and looked down. He found that it was the pouch that he, Ma Liu, and Jiang Sheng were in. This 6 directions Rui pouch is very mysterious. It was a coincidence that I was able to obtain it. Take it with you and I can hide inside. You can avoid the Chichiao's formation. Yang Kai gulped. He had experienced the power of this 6-unity wish bag firsthand. Even Ma Liu and Jiang Sheng, 2 first-grade heaven splitters, had been sucked into it without being able to struggle. Obviously, this was no ordinary item, but now, Old Man Shu was actually giving this 6-unity wish bag to him, and he was going to enter it. Yang Kai's heart couldn't help but pound. Old Man Shu sneered, "Since I dared to give this treasure to you, I'm naturally not afraid that you'll use it against me. If you don't believe me, you can try." Yang Kai hurriedly said, "I wouldn't dare." Old Man Shu misunderstood. "I just feel that this treasure's power is unfathomable. It's the first time I've come into contact with such a treasure, so I can't help but feel a little excited. I definitely wouldn't dare to have any malicious thoughts towards Old Man Shu." "That's best." Old Man Shu's expression was indifferent. "In a moment, I'll teach you a sacrificial refining technique. Just practice it a little and coordinate it with me, and you'll naturally be able to control it freely." "Yes." Yang Kai respectfully replied, "With the help of this treasure, entering the 7 Apertures land shouldn't be a problem." "But Old Man Shu, what about after entering the 7 Apertures land? What does Junior need to do? What can you do with just a few punches and kicks?" Old Man Shu sneered disdainfully. "As long as you bring me into the 7 Apertures land, you'll have completed your task. Then, there's nothing for you to do. I'll handle it myself." Yang Kai relaxed, but at the same time, he was also secretly shocked. From Old Man Shu's words, it seemed he was saying that as long as he could enter the 7 Apertures land, he would be able to take revenge. However, There were truly quite a few heaven-opening cultivators in the Seven Apertures land. Not to mention the Seven Apertures heavenly monarch, who was at the 5th stage of heaven opening. Even the 7 earth protectors were at the 4th stage of heaven opening. There were definitely other 3rd and 2nd stage heaven opening cultivators as well. To be able to face so many powerful enemies alone and still be so confident, just what level of heaven opening was this old man Shu at? Could it be that he was at the 6th stage or even higher? Only someone with such strength could not place the 7 Apertures land in their eyes. It seemed that Ma Liujiangsheng's previous conjecture about old man Shu's strength was wrong. He was definitely not at the 4th stage of heaven opening. After being on tenterhooks for so long, the other party had only asked him to bring him in. Kai Yang didn't know what to say, but thinking about it carefully, this matter really needed to be handled by someone who was especially loyal. Otherwise, if they were to enter the 7 realms and casually shout out, it would ruin old man Shu's plans. The black-winged centipede was obviously to guard against this. At this point, Yang Kai did not have the ability to resist. The main thing was that his life was in old man Shu's hands, so he had no choice but to admit defeat. He immediately nodded to indicate that he understood. Following this, old man Shu really did teach him a sacrificial refining technique. He also personally helped him refine the 6-direction wish pouch. In just half a day, Yang Kai was able to open and close the treasure. However, this was the limit of what he could do. He was unable to use the 6-direction wish pouch to defend himself. Alright, let's go. Old man Shu was clearly prepared. All that was missing was a guide. After saying this, he did not wait for Yang Kai to react. He grabbed him and soared into the sky. In the air, he took out the wooden sword he had been holding before. The wooden sword instantly turned into a huge streak of sword light that wrapped around the two of them as they flew in a certain direction. Without a reference, it was impossible to tell how fast they were going. However, Yang Kai felt that compared to Ma Liu and Jiang Sheng, old man Shu's speed was much faster. After galloping for 3 days, the sword light suddenly stopped. Old man Shu said, "Kid, walk the rest of the way by yourself. With your ability, you will probably need to walk for another 3 days before you can return to the Chiqiao land. Once you enter the Chiqiao land, find a remote place and let me out." After saying this, he lightly added, "Don't think of playing any tricks. Otherwise, you will have to bear the consequences. Old man Shu, don't worry. I will definitely bring you into the Chiqiao land." Opening the 6-direction wish pouch, old man Shu took the initiative to enter. Yang Kai closed the pouch and stuffed it into his clothes. Only then did he continue to fly forward. Sure enough, just as old man Shu had said, after 3 days, the 7 paths was in sight. Without stopping, Kai Yang flew straight ahead. Halfway there, Kai Yang had already made himself miserable. His clothes were a mess, and he had ruthlessly slapped himself a few times, causing him to spit out 3 liters of blood and his breathing to become weak. Half a day later, Yang Kai finally arrived outside the Chiqiao land. This was the first time that Yang Kai had returned to the Chiqiao land from the outside, so he didn't know how to enter. After shouting a few times, there was no response from inside, so it was likely that no one could hear him. Standing there scratching his head for a long time, Yang Kai suddenly thought of a way. Reaching out, he took out his disciple token from his space ring and poured his secret art into it, sending it directly into the fog in front of him. This time, Yang Kai used the right method. Shortly after the token disappeared, the fog in front of him parted on its own accord, revealing a large path in the middle. Yang Kai rushed in and soon arrived in front of a huge door. In front of this door were 2 disciples wearing 7 colored robes, each of them holding a sword and a saber, giving off a majestic aura. After seeing Yang Kai, a look of suspicion appeared on their faces. "Junior brother, which Spirit Land's disciple are you from? How come you don't look familiar?" Yang Kai cupped his fists and said, reporting to brother, "I am from the Fire Spirit Land and have just been promoted from a servant to an ordinary disciple, so these 2 brothers have never seen me before." The 2 men glanced at each other before one of them said, "Wait a moment." Saying so, he took out a round bead, seemingly trying to contact someone. A moment later, the man looked up at Yang Kai and gently nodded. "Junior brother is Yang Kai?" "Indeed. The man stepped aside and handed over Yang Kai's disciple token. Go in, Brother Du wants you to see him immediately. Many thanks, brother. Yang Kai took the token and flashed into the door, his vision blurring for a moment before he appeared in the middle of the 7 refinements land. After probing his body a little, Yang Kai found that the 6 Unity wish bag was still in his arms and there was nothing strange about it, allowing him to finally relax. However, at this time, it was not convenient to release Old Man Shu, so Yang Kai could only set this matter aside and set off towards the Fire Spirit Land, preparing to meet with Du Rufeng first. Thinking about this guy, Yang Kai couldn't help grinding his teeth in hatred. Although he knew that it was definitely Du Enhai who had pushed him out as a scapegoat, all of the favors Du Rufeng had shown him before were now laughable in retrospect. Chapter 3885. Yang Kai flew straight to the main hall where he had first entered the Fire Spirit Land. He guessed that Du Rufeng should live there. In fact, Du Rufeng did live there. From afar, Yang Kai saw a familiar figure standing in front of the main hall, dressed in white, quietly waiting. Who else could it be but Du Rufeng? After landing, Yang Kai cupped his hands and said, Brother, fortunately, I did not fail you. Here is that thief's head. While speaking, he took out Fang Tai's head. Du Rufeng glanced at it and confirmed that it was indeed Fang Tai's head. He tilted his head slightly and a woman dressed as a maid behind him immediately came forward and took the head. Du Rufeng reached out to support Yang Kai. Junior brother, you have worked hard this time. He looked behind him suspiciously. Why are you alone? Where are Ma Liu and Jiang Sheng, the 2 junior brothers? Didn't they go out with you? Why don't I see them? Yang Kai looked sad. Brother, you don't know. This time, everything went smoothly, but on the way back, we encountered a strange beast. The 2 brothers unfortunately died. Junior brother couldn't avenge them and almost didn't make it back. It took a lot of effort to find the way back. Strange beast? What kind of strange beast? Du Rufeng frowned. Yang Kai thought seriously and said, I have never seen it, but I heard the 2 brothers say that it was some kind of void beast. What did it look like? Du Rufeng asked again. Yang Kai quickly described it. Fortunately, he had been careful and asked Shu Laro about the appearance of the void beast. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to answer at this time. After all, he had just arrived outside of Chengkuan and didn't have the opportunity to see any void beast. After listening to Yang Kai's description, the trace of doubt in Du Rufeng's eyes gradually disappeared. Since his description was so accurate, it was obvious that he had seen it with his own eyes. Patting Yang Kai's shoulder, Du Rufeng said, Void beasts have no fixed abode and are very strong. Encountering one in this vast universe is indeed dangerous. Junior brother is really lucky to be able to escape. It's a pity for Brother Ma and Brother Jiang. Yang Kai's eyes turned red. Du Rufeng sighed, that's their fate. Junior brother, there's no need to be sad. You've worked hard this time as well. Go back and rest first. Yes. Yang Kai nodded. After the commotion caused by Elder Shu, he was no longer in the mood to ask about the steward. Now that he had brought Elder Shu into Kikichiao, who knew how long this steward would last? Elder Shu might take revenge in a few days. Although he didn't know how strong Elder Shu was and whether he could succeed, regardless of whether he could succeed or not, he couldn't stay in Kikichiao anymore. It was better to find a way to leave as soon as possible. He didn't ask, but Du Rufeng took the initiative to mention, in a few days, it will be 1 month. When I go to the orchard next month, I will tell the Fire Spirit Land about your matter. Thank you, brother. Yang Kai quickly revealed a happy expression, then junior brother will take his leave. Du Rufeng nodded. Yang Kai turned to leave. After a few steps, Du Rufeng laughed behind him. Junior brother, where are you going? Was he going to kill him to silence him? Yang Kai turned back, carefully hiding the vigilance in his eyes. Didn't brother tell me to go back and rest for a few days? You're wearing the rainbow robe now, so you can be considered a disciple of Kikichiao. You should go to the personnel hall to handle some trivial matters and register. Yang Kai patted his head. I forgot. Du Rufeng tilted his head and said, Xiao He, accompany junior brother. The maid from before answered crisply, yes. Under the guidance of the girl called Xiao He, Yang Kai successfully entered the personnel hall. He registered and received a few new sets of clothes, a happy expression on his face. Little he said, Darren is really lucky. I've served by Darren Du's side for so many years, but this is the first time I've seen a servant who only spent half a year to be promoted to an ordinary disciple. Yang Kai cupped his hands in the direction of the previous hall. It's all thanks to Brother Du's guidance. He paused for a moment, then said, Oh right, Miss Xiao He, where should I live now? Xiao He pursed her lips and smiled. You'll live where Steward Chow used to live. It's still the errand boys' quarters. Yang Kai snapped his fingers. However, Zhu Zheng's quarters were definitely different from the errand boys' quarters. The place was bigger and the environment was better. He hadn't been there yet, so he wasn't too sure about it. Then Master, please go back and rest. I also need to go back and report. Xiao He gracefully bowed. Although she served Du Rufeng, she wasn't a disciple of Chichiao. Yang Kai guessed that she should have been an errand boy before. Du Rufeng saw that she was pretty, so he took her in. Thank you, miss. As Yang Kai spoke, he casually stuffed a few heaven-opening pills into her hands. Xiao He took them and glanced at him with a smile. She didn't refuse, turning around and soaring into the sky, leaving Yang Kai leisurely to the errand boys' quarters. Not long after, he arrived at the errand boys' quarters. The whole village was empty. All the errand boys had gone to the orchard, so there was naturally no one here. He didn't need to go back to his original quarters. He didn't have anything to pack anyway, so he went straight to the largest building. This was where Zhu Zheng used to live, but now it was convenient for him. After checking inside and out and making sure that there was no one around, Yang Kai sneakily opened all the restrictions and hid in the secret room to let Elder Shu out. Kid, you did pretty well. After Elder Shu appeared, he wasn't surprised by the environment. It was as if he knew what Yang Kai was doing recently, even though he was kept in the Six Harmonies Rui pouch. He put the pouch away as he spoke. Yang Kai cupped his hands and said, Elder Shu, I've done what you asked. I can't do anything else. I wish Elder Shu good luck and success. Elder Shu laughed strangely. Don't worry. If I say it's none of your business, then it's none of your business. Take care of yourself. Yang Kai said seriously, I'm really worried about you, Elder Shu. After all, you're alone. Although I haven't been here for long, I know that there are quite a few middle-level Kai Tian cultivators in Kikichiao. Elder Shu, how confident are you that you're here to seek revenge? For me. Elder Shu glanced at him. Since this king dared to come, I'm naturally fully prepared. Then I'm relieved. Old Man Shu quickly left. After sending Old Man Shu away, Yang Kai didn't even have time to close the door when he saw Great General Sai Chen walking over from the other side of the village, his whole body shining with a dazzling golden light. He didn't know if the Great General could smell Yang Kai's aura. In any case, he just walked straight over. When he got close, he turned his head to look at him. Yang Kai felt a little guilty from being stared at like that. He wasn't sure if he saw anything just now. The Great General clearly understood human nature. It was just that he was a little arrogant and was usually too lazy to communicate with others. Moreover, the Great General was still a pet of the Venerable One. If he ran to the Venerable One and complained, the consequences would be unimaginable. However, on second thought, since the Great General appeared in front of him like that, even if he saw something, he probably wouldn't complain. Yang Kai didn't know whether this stupid chicken was really stupid or just pretending to be stupid. After welcoming the Great General into the house, Yang Kai didn't bother with him. He walked around the house with his hands behind his back, thinking about his future path. If Elder Shu came to seek revenge, there would definitely be a huge commotion in Chichiao. Right now, the best way out was to quickly leave this place to avoid being implicated. But what reason could he use to leave? Without Du Rufeng's instructions or any other legitimate reason, there was no way he could leave. He couldn't think of anything even if his head hurt. Calculating the days, it would probably take a few more days for this 1-month period to end. He had wasted quite a bit of time on this trip. It was suffocating to be alone in the house, so Yang Kai simply walked out and flew towards the orchard. The Great General followed him without a word and laid on his head as usual. After entering the orchard, he first went to see Old Fang. When they saw each other, Old Fang was shocked and quickly pulled him into his house. With a pale face, he said, "Brat, do you want to die? Where did you get these clothes? How dare you wear them so casually? Hurry up and take them off." As he spoke, he started to move his hands. Yang Kai raised his hand to block. "Why should I take them off? I'm now a disciple of Chichiao. What's wrong with wearing these?" Old Fang's eyes widened. "Are you suffering from hysteria?" It wasn't that he didn't believe it, but that he didn't dare to believe it. Yang Kai had only been here for a short time. Even if he had made great contributions, how could he be promoted to a disciple of Chichiao? "I'm too lazy to explain it to you." Yang Kai sat down with a gloomy face. Old Fang stared at him for a long time before saying, "You've really been promoted to a disciple of Chichiao?" "Nonsense, I came in from outside. If I hadn't been promoted, who would dare to wear these clothes? I would have been killed on the spot by those Chichiao disciples." Thinking about it, Old Fang agreed. This set of clothes couldn't be casually worn. Kai Yang wasn't stupid enough to play around with his life. What's more, if it wasn't for the 7 realms, Kai Yang wouldn't have this set of clothes. Did he really become a disciple of Chichiao? Old Fang's eyes lit up and he couldn't hide his envy. "Little brother, you're amazing." After saying this, he slapped his own mouth and cupped his hands. "Lord Yang really is amazing. You're young and promising." This old man is impressed. Yang Kai raised his head to look at him and couldn't help but roll his eyes. "Also, I'll be taking over the position of manager of this orchard." "Manager?" Old Fang's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. "Are you serious?" Yang Kai knocked on the table. Old Fang understood and hurriedly poured him tea. Yang Kai took a sip and said lightly, "In a few days, Brother Du will announce this news. I came over to give you a heads up so you can be mentally prepared." Old Fang couldn't be more excited. "Little brother, you've made a meteoric rise. You have to take care of me in the future." Yang Kai sighed. He didn't know how to explain it to him. Moreover, he definitely couldn't tell him about Elder Shu. He just nodded and said, "Don't worry, I'll take care of you if I can." Old Fang was moved to tears. After leaving Old Fang's place, Yang Kai went to Dai Yu's place. Just like Old Fang, Dai Yu was obviously shocked and couldn't believe what she had just seen. She kept trying to pull off his clothes, forcing Yang Kai to flee. She would see the truth in a few days. Chapter 3886. A few days later, the orchard was closed and all the handamen returned to the handamen's room. Dai Yu and Old Fang first went to Yang Kai's former room but didn't find him. After some communication, they learned that Yang Kai had moved into Zhu Zheng's former steward's room. Since Kai Yang dared to move into the manager's office, he obviously had something to rely on. Moreover, they didn't know who it was that spread the news that Kai Yang was about to take over the position of the orchard's manager, but many of the odd-job workers knew about it. Old Fang and Dai Yu both said that they didn't leak anything. Yang Kai guessed that it was most likely Du Rufeng adding fuel to the fire behind the scenes. It should be to pave the way for the announcement in a few days, so as not to be too abrupt. Every month, it was naturally time to go to the market to buy insects from other spiritual lands. If it was in the past, Yang Kai would definitely be in high spirits, but now that Old Man Shu's matter had happened, he didn't have the energy to do anything. He was always on tenterhooks, afraid that one day a great war would suddenly break out in the Chichiao land and he would be the fish in the moat. Moreover, the source of income that was originally opened by the great general probably wouldn't last long. Losing interest, Yang Kai let Dai Yu and Old Fang go to the market to deal with it. Anyway, after buying the 3rd-grade pure golden dew for Dai Yu last time, Yang Kai didn't have many opening heaven pills left. Originally, he wanted them to pay for it. Dai Yu and Old Fang didn't understand. He was clearly promoted to a disciple of the Chichiao land and was going to take over the position of the orchard steward. Why was Yang Kai still so unhappy? However, it wasn't appropriate for them to ask, so they could only leave first and go to the market to negotiate with the representatives of the 6 spiritual lands. Not long after the two left, a handaman came to visit. Yang Kai didn't even know the other person's name. He hadn't even seen him before. If it was just hearing the news, it wouldn't be a big deal. The key point was that Yang Kai had even moved into the steward's room and was wearing a 7-colored shirt. Obviously, the news wasn't groundless. Since there was a change in leadership, the handymen naturally wanted to build a good relationship with him. Throughout the day, Yang Kai had been welcoming and sending off people. There were nearly 1,000 odd job workers in the odd job room. Even if only 10% of them came to visit, there were still nearly 100 of them. Wanting to build a good relationship with them was definitely not just empty words. It was normal to send some gifts. The odd job workers didn't have much wealth, so they couldn't give him anything too valuable. The heaven opening pill was the most suitable. 5 or 10 of them would accumulate quite a sizable amount. After 3 whole days, Yang Kai didn't know how many odd job workers it had received. In any case, the number of heaven opening pills it had received had already exceeded 5,000. Yang Kai couldn't chase people away when they came to deliver things. Otherwise, it would be too unreasonable. During the day, he would receive gifts and receive guests, and at night, he would feed the general with Dai Yu and Old Fang. With both income, his originally deflated wallet would suddenly swell up again. 3 days later, before going to the orchard, Du Rufeng personally came to announce that Yang Kai had taken over the position of the orchard manager. Not many people were surprised, and everyone was happy. When Yang Kai took over, he naturally made a generous speech in front of Du Rufeng, vowing that he would manage the orchard properly. Du Rufeng only said a few words of encouragement and then let him go. Arriving at the orchard, Yang Kai went straight to the lonely peak at the center of the orchard. Last time, he had come here with Du Rufeng to eavesdrop, so he wasn't too unfamiliar with this place. With the orchard manager's token in hand, the entire orchard's formation was under his control. This was his first time taking over the orchard, so there were many things he wasn't familiar with. After busying himself for several days, he barely managed to straighten out everything and knew what to do as a manager. Speaking of which, the orchard manager was both idle and not idle. When he had nothing to do, he would casually patrol the area. When he had something to do, he would need to go to the various odd job workers' orchards to help them take care of the fruit trees. A few days later, Yang Kai used his authority as the orchard's manager to transfer Old Fang and Dai Yu to his side, saying that they would help him manage the orchard. The area that they were originally taking care of was handed over to others. In this regard, Dai Yu and Old Fang were quite uneasy. After all, when Zhu Zhang was in charge, he didn't use his authority so blatantly for personal gain. They both tried to persuade Yang Kai to stop for the time being, lest Du Rufeng had any objections. Yang Kai was too lazy to pay attention to them. Du Rufeng had ulterior motives towards him, so why would he care about these things? On the other hand, Elder Shu had disappeared for many days, but the Chichiao land was still so quiet, making Yang Kai anxious. If Elder Shu had made some noise as soon as he arrived, Yang Kai would have been relieved, but this calm before the storm made him feel uneasy. No one knew when Elder Shu would make a move and what kind of situation the Chichiao land would be in at that time. He had been here for half a year, and both Old Fang and Dai Yu had taken care of him. Although it wasn't convenient for him to tell them about the Chichiao land's crisis, he had them by his side. If something happened, it would be easier for them to take care of each other. Since they couldn't persuade them, Old Fang and Dai Yu could only silently help Yang Kai manage the orchard. As a result, Yang Kai had nothing to do all day. Yang Kai originally thought that Elder Shu would make a move soon, but who would have thought that he would wait for 3 months? During these 3 months, there was no movement from the Chichiao land, and Elder Shu didn't come looking for Yang Kai. If it wasn't for the faint uneasiness in his heart that he couldn't dispel, Yang Kai would have thought that Elder Shu had left the Chichiao land. However, the Chichiao land was covered in layers of formations, so he had to rely on himself to sneak in. It was impossible for him to leave so quietly. One day, Yang Kai was playing chess with Old Fang when he suddenly felt something. He took out an item and silently sensed it. Du Rufeng summoned me. I'll be back soon. Old Fang heard this and nodded, come back soon. Yang Kai put down the chess piece in his hand, went out the door, and soared into the sky. Not long after, he arrived at Du Rufeng's residence and entered the hall. At first glance, He saw Du Rufeng standing in front of the hall, looking at him with a smile. During these 3 months, Du Rufeng would occasionally summon him to ask about the situation of the orchard, and Yang Kai would report it truthfully. In any case, he had done a good job managing the orchard over the past few months, so there was nothing to be afraid of. However, every time he came, Du Rufeng would come alone. This time, it was different. There were 3 people in the hall. One was Du Yufeng, and the other was a young man Yang Kai had never seen before. As soon as Yang Kai came in, he felt this young man's eyes sweep over him like a greedy viper, making him feel very uncomfortable. This gaze was filled with scrutiny, but also a hint of interest. These 2 were standing while the other was sitting in an armchair. Surprisingly, this was the Earth Guardian of the Fire Spirit Land, Venerable Duanhai. Yang Kai's expression became solemn as he quickly cupped his fists. Greetings, Venerable, greetings, Brother Du. Since the last time Duanhai brought him to the Fire Spirit Land, Yang Kai had not seen him again, so he did not know why he would appear here today. Yang Kai instinctively felt that something was wrong. Could it be that Old Man Shu had been caught and now he was involved? If that was the case, then Old Man Shu was too useless. Is that him? The young man who Yang Kai didn't know suddenly asked a question that was inexplicable. Du Rufeng said, "That's him. There's nothing special about him. Why is he so lucky?" The man chuckled. Du Rufeng said, "Junior brother doesn't know, you should ask him." Yang Kai was confused and asked suspiciously, "Brother Du, this is," Du Rufeng introduced, "this is Yu Lian, Brother Yu. He has been in retreat before and has only recently come out, so you haven't seen him before." "So it's Brother Yu." Yang Kai cupped his fists and bowed, "Greetings, Brother Yu." Yu Lian grinned, "Junior brother Yang, right? Are you interested in guessing what I was in retreat before?" "Who the hell would be interested? Is this person crazy?" Yang Kai cursed in his heart, but he still said, "Junior brother doesn't know, please enlighten me, brother." Yu Lian smiled, "For us cultivators to break through to split the heavens, we need to gather the power of yin, yang, and 5 elements. Brother, I first condensed yin and yang energy, then the 5 elements. Of the 5 elements, the first one I condensed was fire energy. Fire gives birth to earth gives birth to metal, and metal gives birth to water. The last time I was in seclusion, I was condensing water energy." Yang Kai silently calculated and was shocked. This fellow was a half-step split the heavens cultivator, just one more energy away from breaking through. Brother's complexion is rosy, so you should have succeeded. Now you're only 1 step away from split the heavens. Congratulations, brother. Yes, 1 step away. Yu Lian's eyes flashed with fanaticism. However, how many people have been stopped by this 1 step? You might as well tell junior brother that the materials I condensed are all grade 4. Then if brother can break through to split the heavens, you'll be a grade 4 split the heavens cultivator. My Chichiao land will have another great general. It'll be a blessing for us disciples. Grade 4 split the heavens cultivators are not easy to find. Even with the resources of the Chichiao land, who knows how long it'll take to find a suitable one. I'm afraid it'll take 100 years or even longer. Yu Lian let out a long sigh. With Venerable's ability, I'm sure you'll be able to find a suitable one for brother. Yu Lian turned his head to look at Duanhai and smiled. There's no need to trouble Venerable with such a trivial matter. As long as junior brother can help me with something, it'll be fine. Yang Kai felt a chill run down his spine, faintly feeling that something was wrong. Junior brother's strength is shallow, I don't know what he can help brother with. Yu Lian leaned forward slightly and stared deeply at him. Shidi, you only need to contribute your wood elemental power. Hearing this, Yang Kai was shocked, all the things he didn't understand before suddenly becoming clear. No wonder after he helped Du Rufeng obtain the Scarlet Heaven Golden Flame, this guy had taken special care of him. It turned out that he was eyeing his wood energy. Although Yang Kai had guessed this a long time ago, he wasn't sure. Only now did he know that his guess was correct. When he was forced to release the Dao seal in front of Du Rufeng, he had already sowed the seeds of disaster. Promoting him to be the orchard steward and sending him to hunt down Fang Tai was also using him as a pawn. In any case, if his wood energy was really taken away, he probably wouldn't have a good end. I don't know what you're talking about. As soon as Yang Kai's words fell, he sent out a punch. Then, without even looking back, he pushed his space principles and flashed away from where he stood. Chapter 3887. A figure flashed and Yang Kai instantly disappeared. Duanhai, who had been sitting on the throne, raised his eyes and shouted, "Space principles." Saying so, he stretched out his hand and made a grasping motion. Following this action, inside the fire spirit land, Yang Kai, who had just escaped from the main hall, immediately felt a great sense of crisis. Turning his head, he saw a giant hand appear behind him, seemingly capable of lifting the heavens and lifting the sea, trying to grab him. Yang Kai was shocked. He continued to push his space principles as his figure flickered, but no matter how hard he tried, he was unable to escape from the range of this giant hand. There was also a powerful aura firmly locking onto him. As the giant hand descended, covering the sky, Yang Kai's body tightened and he let out a muffled groan as the scene in front of him changed rapidly. By the time he recovered, he had already appeared in a secret room. Duanhai, Du Rufeng, and Yu Lian were all here, standing behind Duanhai, one with an indifferent expression and the other with a smile on his face. Yang Kai's spirit was tense as he looked around but couldn't find any way to escape, his mouth filled with bitterness. Damn, I'm afraid I'm done for. Even using the space divine technique, I can't escape from Duanhai's grasp. The gap in strength between me and this fourth stage heaven splitter is just too big. Junior brother Yang, why are you running? Big brother won't eat you, he just wants to borrow your wood attribute strength, Yu Lian asked with a smile. Was he waiting to die if he didn't run? Although he knew his chances of escaping were slim, he still had to try, so he said with a gloomy face, if big brother wants my wood attribute strength, he only needs to ask and junior brother will contribute it. There's no need to deceive me like this. Yu Lian chuckled, junior brother is a sensible person, so be obedient and don't resist. Yang Kai said, but I'm curious, can other people's yin, yang, and 5 elements be taken by force? He had asked Old Fang this question before, but Old Fang couldn't explain it. However, since he had encountered such a thing today, it meant that the power of the 5 elements of yin and yang could be taken away. Otherwise, why would they spend so much effort? Only one kind of person's power of yin, yang, and the 5 elements can be seized by force. Perhaps because there was hope for him to advance to split the heavens, Yu Lian was in a particularly good mood. When he heard Yang Kai's question, he did not hesitate to answer. What kind of people? Yang Kai raised his eyebrows. For example, junior brother has only condensed 1 type of power. If junior brother has condensed 2 types of power, then there's nothing we can do. Yu Lian explained with a smile, and after forcefully stripping it out, junior brother's wood elemental power will drop by 1 or 2 levels. But that's okay. I heard that junior brother's wood elemental power is at least level 5. As for me, I only need level 4. So as long as I'm lucky, I can still use it even if its level drops. Yang Kai understood. I see. Yu Lian said, junior brother, do you have anything else you want to ask? Yang Kai said with a sullen face, if my wood elemental power is taken away, what will happen to me? Yu Lian said, die? Of course, if you're lucky, you can still live, but I'm afraid you won't be able to cultivate in the future. Hearing this, Yang Kai's heart sank to the bottom. 2 endings, no matter which one it was, would be a very tragic situation for a cultivator. If he couldn't cultivate, he might as well just die. Not giving Yang Kai a chance to speak, Yu Lian turned around and cupped his fists to Duanhai. Thank you for your trouble, Venerable. Duanhai gently nodded, raised his hand, and waved it fiercely. With a clatter, the sound of chains shuttling through the void rang out as a burst of energy rushed towards him from all directions. Yang Kai looked around and saw a series of thumb-thick chains composed of complex runes piercing towards him. Yang Kai wanted to dodge, but his body stiffened and he couldn't move at all. Kai Kai asterisk a series of noises rang out as the invisible chains pierced through his body. Yang Kai instantly cried out in pain as his clothes became soaked with sweat. The spirit array under his feet lit up and slowly rotated. There was actually a spirit array set up here, so it seemed that this spirit array had been prepared beforehand and was only waiting for the right time to pull him over and deprive him of his wood elemental power. The chains stretched taut and pulled Yang Kai up into the air. Duan Hai and Yu Lian's figures flickered as they each stepped into a different spirit array, leaving Du Rufeng to stand guard. Yang Kai was extremely anxious. Now that he was in a situation where he had no chance of survival, it was impossible for him to get out of this predicament with his own strength. The only person he could count on was Old Man Shu. However, Old Man Shu had been in the Seven Secrets land for 3 months without any news. Yang Kai didn't know where he was or what he was doing, so it was unrealistic to expect him to come and save him. What's more, Yang Kai was afraid that he had already lost his value to Old Man Shu. On the contrary, his life and death were in Old Man Shu's hands. Even if Old Man Shu knew about his situation, he probably wouldn't care. Inside the spirit array, Yu Lian sat down cross-legged, a mysterious aura pulsing from his body. On the other side, Duan Hai also wore a solemn expression as he constantly formed seals with his hands. With the clattering of the chains, Yang Kai could clearly feel a strong force being transmitted from the chains to his body, shaking his Dao seal and extracting his wood elemental power. An indescribable pain came from all over his body, causing Yang Kai to grit his teeth as blue veins began to appear on his forehead. At that moment, a sudden change occurred. Behind Yang Kai, a giant black centipede phantom suddenly appeared and firmly locked Yang Kai in place. No matter what Duan Hai did, he was unable to extract the wood elemental power from Yang Kai's body. Flying black-back centipede? A trace of surprise flashed across Duan Hai's eyes as he shouted in a low voice. Stopping the hand seals he was forming, his figure flashing over to Yang Kai's side and placing his hand on Yang Kai's spine. A moment later, a violent force rushed into Yang Kai's body as he examined his Dao seal. In the next instant, Duan Hai's expression changed as he shouted, "Boy, who planted this flying black-back centipede in you?" Yang Kai could only gasp in pain, his face as white as paper, but he still sneered, "Damn you." He had not expected that the flying black-back centipede, which had originally been a hindrance to him, would actually save him in this moment of crisis. This was truly a stroke of luck. Thinking about it carefully, this was not surprising. This flying black-back centipede was originally designed to target Dao seals. Duan Hai had set up this spirit array and wanted to use this despicable method to deprive him of his wood elemental power, which was the same as attacking his Dao seal. The two methods obviously conflicted with each other. At this moment, Yang Kai couldn't help feeling grateful to Old Man Shu. Although he didn't know how long he would be able to buy, being able to breathe for a moment was always good. Duan Hai turned his head and looked at Du Rufeng. "Did you see anything else in his Dao seal last time?" Du Rufeng was also a little confused. With his knowledge and experience, he had no idea what this flying black-back centipede was, so he shook his head and said, "Never." "Then it must have appeared later." Duan Hai's eyes flashed as he stared deeply at Yang Kai. "Little brat, when you went out last time, who did you meet?" Duan Hai's mind was also quite meticulous, so he was able to guess the truth of the matter. How could Yang Kai tell him? Sneering, Duan Hai exerted some force on his hand, causing Yang Kai to almost faint from the pain and immediately let out a pitiful cry. Duan Hai sneered, "Do you think this king has no way to deal with this thing? It's just a bug. Once this king gets rid of this thing, he'll deal with you." Saying so, Duan Hai moved his hand, his palm constantly striking the Dao seal on Yang Kai's spine, pouring a pure energy into Yang Kai's body and shaking the flying black-back centipede wrapped around his Dao seal. With Duan Hai's actions, Yang Kai could clearly feel that the centipede mark that had been wrapping around his Dao seal was gradually loosening its grip and faintly showing signs of being expelled. A vague will suddenly extended from the flying black-back centipede, causing Yang Kai, who was in great pain, to suddenly feel like a drowning man who had grasped onto a life-saving straw, exclaiming in joy, "Old Man Shu, save me." "Waste, you almost ruined my plans." Old Man Shu's voice resounded in Yang Kai's mind, but to him, it was like the sound of nature. Duan Hai's face changed dramatically as he shouted, "Who dares act so wildly here?" He had obviously heard what Duan Hai said just now, and being able to extend his will into the flying black-back centipede was obviously the owner of this strange insect. Duanhai's actions just now should have alerted the other party. There is actually a powerful enemy hiding in the 7 Possibilities land. Duanhai couldn't help breaking out in a cold sweat. Fortunately, he had coincidentally discovered something today, otherwise, he didn't know what would have happened. Duanhai, we haven't seen each other for many years, have you forgotten this king's voice? Old Man Shu's voice was cold. Duanhai's face changed several times as he cried out, Shu Huang, you're still alive. Old Man Shu grinned, this king is blessed with great fortune, how could he die? You traitors schemed against me and stole my 7 Possibilities land. Today, this king will take it all back with interest. Duanhai quickly said, I know nothing about what happened back then. Do you think this king will believe you? Today, all of you will die. As soon as the word die fell, an earth-shattering sound came from outside. Even though this secret room was covered in layers upon layers of spirit arrays, rubble still fell from the ceiling, as if the entire world was about to collapse. Immediately afterwards, a violent force suddenly erupted, transforming into an indestructible finger that shot towards Duanhai. Duanhai paled as he hurriedly retreated, his hands flying as he formed a series of seals and pushed his palm forward. Asterisk Hong Long Long. Asterisk amidst the loud noise, heaven and earth were turned upside down. The secret room exploded and the great formation collapsed. Yang Kai, who was bound mid-air, instantly felt as if he was a canoe in the middle of a vast ocean, surrounded by endless waves that threatened to capsize him at any moment. The aftermath of the attacks of the 2 heaven-opening realm masters overflowed, piercing through the universe and collapsing everything around him. Yang Kai's body was constantly tumbling as the sound of bones breaking rang out from all over his body. Blood spurted from his mouth and nose as he saw stars and his soul became unstable. Chapter 3888. Yang Kai was shocked. Although he had gone out last time with Ma Liu and Jiang Sheng as First Order splitting the heavens, he had never seen them fight, so he didn't know what kind of strength they possessed. What's more, the gap between a First Order splitting the heavens and a Fourth Order splitting the heavens was simply too big. Now that Duanhai and Old Man Shu had fought, the aftermath of their attacks had almost taken his life. This was the heaven-opening realm. If a mid-rank splitting the heavens had such power, then what about a high-rank splitting the heavens? Blood spurting from his mouth and nose, Yang Kai's eyes were as bright as stars. Dust and smoke rose up as the hall collapsed and darkness enveloped Yang Kai. Yang Kai was in extreme pain as the collapsed building was pressing down on him, but fortunately, the force that had been restraining him had disappeared. This place had been destroyed, so the spirit array arranged here had naturally lost its function, but without the shackles of this spirit array, Yang Kai was able to regain his freedom. With a shake of his arms, Yang Kai removed the debris that had been pressing down on him and light reappeared in front of him. Before he had time to assess his surroundings, he heard a light cough from nearby. Yang Kai turned his head to look, a fierce light flashing across his eyes as he reached out and grasped the blue dragon spear. Shaking the spear, Yang Kai poured all of his strength into it and with a resounding dragon roar, he thrust it forward. With a bang, a large amount of rubble was sent flying, revealing Yu Lian's figure underneath. Blood spurting from his mouth, Yu Lian's eyes bulged as he stared in shock. Die! Yang Kai roared as his space principles fluctuated. At the same time, a black ball appeared at the tip of the blue dragon spear, which had been poured into Yu Lian's body. Everything collapsed. A huge hole immediately appeared in Yu Lian's chest as his 5 viscera and 6 bowels disappeared. Grabbing the blue dragon spear with one hand, Yu Lian's other hand reached out towards Yang Kai, a destructive aura pulsing from it. Yang Kai took a deep breath, his chest bulging as he opened his mouth and spat out a sharp breath, cutting through the layers of flesh on Yu Lian's arm like a sharp blade, revealing the white bone underneath. A shriek came out of Yu Lian's mouth. Yang Kai raised his spear and threw Yu Lian's body into the air. The sky was filled with spear shadows. In just 3 breaths, by the time Yang Kai pulled back his spear, Yu Lian had already fallen to the ground like a ragged sack. There were countless holes all over his body, and blood was gushing out like a fountain. His vitality was quickly fading away, and it seemed that he would not be able to survive. Before he could rejoice that he had escaped death, A murderous aura came from behind him. Yang Kai quickly turned around and blocked with his spear. With a crisp sound, a huge force came, and he was sent flying, blood spurting out of his mouth in midair. Landing on the ground in a hurry, he looked up and saw Du Rufeng looking to the side in disbelief. "Brother Yu." Yu Lian's mouth opened and closed, but he was gasping for breath like a fish that had jumped ashore, unable to utter a single word. His neck tilted, and he was no longer breathing. Du Rufeng's hair stood on end. He simply could not accept this. Just a moment ago, his brother was still in high spirits, ready to deprive others of their wood elemental power to advance to splitting the heavens. How could he have died in the blink of an eye? He knew that the source of all this was caused by the aftermath of the battle between the unknown enemy and the Venerable. In that instant, Du Rufeng almost thought that he was going to die. Although he had escaped death in the end, the aftermath of the battle had caused him to suffer heavy injuries. Thinking about it, Brother Yu Lian was not much better off. He was heavily injured, and then he was ambushed. In a moment of carelessness, he lost his life. Du Rufeng's heart palpitated. Just now, if Yang Kai had not attacked Yu Lian but him, would he have been able to dodge? Turning his head, he saw Yang Kai coughing up blood on the side. Obviously, he was not in a good condition either. "You killed Brother Yu." Du Rufeng's face was so cold that it was almost dripping water. "You're next." Yang Kai pointed his spear forward as he wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. "What a joke." Du Rufeng's face twisted. "You dare spout such nonsense in front of a venerable?" After speaking, Du Rufeng suddenly frowned and swept the area with his divine sense, his expression changing slightly as he discovered that Duan Hai was no longer here. Du Rufeng knew that something big had happened in the Seven Openings land and that the Venerable should be in a hurry to defend against the enemy and could not pay attention to this place. Du Rufeng's heart sank as he wondered just who this Xu Huang was for the Venerable to act like he was facing a great enemy. Hong hong hong, earth-shaking sounds rang out from the heavens as dazzling lights flickered, accompanied by intense energy fluctuations. It was obvious that there were masters fighting in the heavens. However, this was not something he needed to worry about as the Heavenly Monarch and the Seven Venerables would deal with it. No matter how strong this newcomer was, it was impossible for him to be a match for so many heaven-opening realm masters. Shua shua shua, the sound of something breaking through the air could be heard. It was the disciples of the Chichiao land who heard the commotion. They flew over from all directions to investigate the situation. When they saw the ruins, they couldn't help but be shocked. When they saw Yu Lian's corpse lying on top of the ruins, their expressions changed drastically. One of them stood out and asked, "Senior Du, what happened? Who killed Brother Yu?" Du Rufeng coldly stared at Yang Kai and said, "Who else could it be? It's this guy in front of me. Kill him." Bold madman, daring to commit murder in the Fire Spirit land in broad daylight? Hand over your life. The group of Seven Openings land disciples was furious upon hearing this and summoned their artifacts one after another to attack Yang Kai. As soon as these people appeared, Yang Kai had been secretly accumulating strength. Although he also wanted to fight to the death with Du Rufeng, it was now impossible for two fists to fight against four, so it was best to flee first. What's more, almost all of these people were heaven-opening realm masters. Although most of them were first-grade heaven-opening realm masters, with only a few second-grade heaven-opening realm masters, they were still not people he could contend with right now. With the exquisiteness of the space divine technique, as long as there were no masters on the level of Duan Hai, Yang Kai was confident he could escape. With a series of rumbles, the void collapsed as countless attacks rained down, but Yang Kai had already dodged to the side, staring coldly at Du Rufeng before flying off in the direction of the orchard. Du Rufeng was flustered and exasperated. "A bunch of trash, chase after him." The numerous disciples of the Seven Openings land did not need him to give orders, and as soon as they saw Yang Kai flee, they immediately gave chase. In an instant, above the Fire Spirit land, a single person fled while a group of people chased after him, creating a lively scene. Wang, with a loud bang, the heavens and earth trembled, a dull sound directly reaching one's mind, causing one's eyes and ears to tremble. Along with this sound, a flashing spirit array appeared in the sky. This spirit array was incomparably large, almost covering the entire fire spirit land. When this spirit array appeared, a heaven-destroying, earth-extinguishing aura descended from the sky, and within the fire spirit land, almost everyone felt an aura of death envelop them. Du Rufeng, who was chasing closely behind Yang Kai, cried out in alarm, "The earth-protecting array." Yang Kai's hair also stood on end as a feeling of impending doom filled his heart. Although he did not know what was happening, listening to Du Rufeng's words, it seemed that the fire spirit land's earth-protecting array had been activated. In the next instant, an angry roar rang out, "Shu Huang, you're crazy. Do you want to destroy the Seven Openings land?" Old Man Shu's laughter resounded through the world. "So what if it's destroyed? Since this Seven Openings land was seized by you traitors, this king doesn't want it. Die, all of you." As soon as these words fell, the huge spirit array that enveloped the fire spirit land suddenly began to spin madly, and along with it, rays of light shot out from the spirit array like a torrential downpour from the sky, seemingly capable of destroying the heavens and earth. Yang Kai did not even think about it and dodged into the sealed world bead. Hiding inside the sealed world bead, Yang Kai looked out through the sealed world bead and saw that the heavens and earth were filled with rays of light. Everything in the fire spirit land began to fall apart as huge gullies appeared in the ground. The group of Seven Openings land disciples who were chasing after him all wore looks of horror as they tried to dodge, but very few of them were able to avoid these rays of light. As the rays of light flashed past, those who were hit by them were injured, those who were grazed by them were killed, and those who were badly mutilated fell from the sky like dumplings. Yang Kai gulped as he secretly prayed that the sealed world bead would not be hit. Although he did not know what would happen to the sealed world bead if it was hit, it would not end well. Fortunately, although the attacks were endless and dense, the sealed world bead was very small, so as long as one's luck was not too bad, there should not be any problems. It was not until this moment that Yang Kai understood what Old Man Shu was relying on and why he dared to come here alone for revenge. The Seven Openings land's earth-defending array was obviously not activated by Venerable Protector Earth, so there was no reason for him to kill his own disciples. Only Old Man Shu could do such a thing. Combined with what Old Man Shu had said to the others before, Yang Kai faintly felt that this Seven Openings land should have a very deep relationship with Old Man Shu. It could even be said that the Seven Openings land originally belonged to Old Man Shu, but for some reason, it was taken away. Although it was taken away, Old Man Shu still retained the secret method to control the Seven Openings land's earth-defending array. He had disappeared without a trace for 3 months because he was trying to seize control of the Seven Openings land's earth-defending array. With Old Man Shu's own ability, coupled with the assistance of the Seven Openings land's earth-defending array, he might really have a chance to take revenge. In this situation, Yang Kai naturally hoped that Old Man Shu would make as much noise as possible. Only then would he have a chance to escape from here. If Old Man Shu could not hold on and was killed, then he would definitely be buried with him. Just the earth-defending Venerable Duan Hai alone was not enough. The earth-defending array's attack did not last long, only about 20 breaths or so. But after 20 breaths of time, the entire fire spirit land fell silent. Yang Kai waited for a moment until the spirit array in the sky disappeared before leaving the sealed world bead. Looking around, all he could see was a mess. The ground was full of broken corpses and the Seven Openings land's disciples wearing 7 colored robes were scattered about, as if the end of the world had arrived. A large net suddenly fell from the sky, covering Yang Kai's head. This large net had the power to seal the world. Yang Kai's body immediately tensed up as he shouted in a low voice, "Heaven-capturing net." Chapter 3889. Du Rufeng was not dead. This thought flashed across Yang Kai's mind. This heaven-trapping net was Du Rufeng's artifact, and since it was displayed at this moment, it undoubtedly meant that Du Rufeng was still alive. Yang Kai's figure rapidly fell downwards, but the heaven-trapping net was like a maggot in his bones, unable to escape. With the surrounding heaven and earth locked down, he could not even use instant movement. Watching the net wrap around him, Yang Kai became anxious and poured all of his strength into the blue dragon spear before thrusting it upwards. The heaven-capturing net, on the other hand, didn't seem to be affected at all. Instead, It directly fell down and tightly wrapped around Kai Yang. The power of imprisonment was transmitted from the net, and in an instant, Kai Yang felt as if all the strength in his body had been bound. In mid-air, Du Rufeng's figure slowly appeared, a look of resentment and lingering fear on his face. When the Earth-defending array was activated just now, if he hadn't been lucky enough, he would have followed in the footsteps of his other brothers. However, at this moment, his condition was not very good. His face was pale, his hand was clutching his chest, and the corners of his mouth were full of blood. The aftermath of the confrontation between Duan Hai and Old Man Shu had caused him some serious injuries. "You're quite lucky you didn't die." Du Rufeng stared coldly at Yang Kai, who was bound by the heaven-trapping net and formed a seal with one hand, increasing the strength of the net's binding force. Yang Kai snorted. Although the situation was unfavorable, his mouth did not show any mercy. "Aren't you also alive?" Du Rufeng snorted. "Don't be so smug, this king will kill you now." Yu Lian coveted Yang Kai's would attribute strength, but Du Rufeng did not care. Everyone condensed their own strength differently, and he had already condensed his own would attribute strength long ago, so he did not care about Yang Kai's life or death. Now that the Seven Apertures world had undergone such a great change, leaving Yang Kai alive would only make things worse, so it was best to kill him first. Saying so, Du Rufeng was already preparing to attack. Grasping the void with one hand, a long sword appeared in his grasp, and changing his hand seal, he shouted, "Go!" The long sword turned into a sword light and shot straight towards Yang Kai. In his field of vision, the sword light rapidly enlarged in front of him, and the aura of death enveloped him. At this critical moment of life and death, Yang Kai's heart was as calm as still water. When the dragon's roar resounded, the bones in his body crackled and his body expanded rapidly. The surface of his body was covered with dragon scales. When he was in his dragon form, he suddenly opened his mouth and bit down on the incoming sword light. Yang Kai felt as if his teeth were about to shatter from the powerful shockwave. His mouth was filled with the taste of blood. Du Rufeng was stunned. His eyes followed the changes in Yang Kai's body. He didn't expect Yang Kai to have such an ability. After a while, he exclaimed, "Dragon vein." After Yang Kai dragonized, the surface characteristics of his body were too obvious. How could Du Rufeng not see some clues? In the blink of an eye, Yang Kai had already transformed into a 200-meter-long dragon body, but even so, he couldn't escape the shackles of the heaven-capturing net. This thing was similar to the Six Directions Good Fortune pouch in that it could expand or shrink. As Yang Kai's body changed, it continued to expand and bind him. However, Yang Kai clearly felt that the heaven-capturing net was showing signs of instability. He was overjoyed. He knew that although this thing had similar functions to the Six Directions Good Fortune pouch, it was not as mysterious as Elder Shu's Six Directions Good Fortune pouch. What was there to hesitate about? Grabbing the black dragon spear, he waved it fiercely. In an instant, the light on the heaven-capturing net flashed wildly and quickly dimmed. "Don't even think about it," Du Rufeng shouted. With a wave of his hand, the sword light that Yang Kai was biting in his mouth suddenly flew back. Du Rufeng grabbed it and slashed down at Yang Kai. The huge sword light chopped down. Yang Kai couldn't avoid it. If he took this blow, even if he didn't die, he would be seriously injured. At this moment of crisis, a golden light quickly flew over from the distance and blocked Yang Kai's path. This golden light was originally just a small ball of light, but after it appeared, it suddenly expanded and turned into a giant golden pheasant several dozen meters in size. Great General. Yang Kai was absent-minded. He didn't expect that the one who came to save him at this critical moment would be that unreliable stupid chicken. This time, when Du Rufeng summoned him, he didn't bring the Great General. Instead, he left it in the orchard. He didn't know why it would come here. The sword light chopped down. The Great General let out a short cry and was sent flying. In mid-air, its body returned to its original size and its golden hair became much dimmer. Yang Kai was furious. His body filled with dragon breath, the black dragon spear thrust forward like a dragon. He shouted, "Break for me." It was as if a real black dragon had appeared, the power of the spear piercing through the void. With a crash, The heaven-capturing net that had been binding Yang Kai collapsed and the power of imprisonment disappeared instantly. The black dragon spear, however, didn't lose any momentum and shot straight towards Du Rufeng. Feeling the power of this spear, Du Rufeng's face changed greatly and his figure leapt up a few times to dodge. How could Yang Kai give him a chance to catch his breath? This guy was a half-step heaven-opening cultivator, stronger than him, and he also had a secret treasure like the shadowless muslin. If he really found an opportunity, he could use the shadowless muslin to cover himself and Yang Kai would never be able to find him again. Stretching out a dragon claw, Yang Kai grabbed at Du Rufeng and at the same time urged his space principles. The world suddenly froze, and Du Rufeng's figure also came to a halt. In an instant, Yang Kai's hand clenched tightly, holding Du Rufeng in place. Scram! Du Rufeng roared, his strength fluctuating wildly. Even though Yang Kai was in his dragon form, he still felt like he was about to break free, his chest suddenly bulging as he spat out a mouthful of hot air towards Du Rufeng. Fire dragon breath. A dragon breath powerful enough to burn all things in the world erupted from Yang Kai's mouth and enveloped Du Rufeng. A scream immediately rang out as Du Rufeng struggled even more violently. Feeling a sharp pain in his hand, Yang Kai's dragon claw loosened, allowing Du Rufeng to take this opportunity to escape. Looking around, Du Rufeng was in an extremely sorry state at the moment. He had already suffered a lot of damage in the aftermath of the battle between Duan Hai and Old Man Shu, and now that the heaven-capturing net had been destroyed and Yang Kai had attacked him, his exposed skin was covered in blisters, making him look extremely miserable. Staring at each other, Yang Kai could clearly see the fear and uneasiness in Du Rufeng's eyes. Unlike Yang Kai, who was accustomed to fighting and killing, Du Rufeng had been born into the Seven Openings land and had only been able to leave it a handful of times, let alone engage in a life-or-death battle. At first, Du Rufeng was able to gain the upper hand by relying on his own strength and the power of his artifacts, but now that he had suffered a slight setback, he was unable to cope. Yang Kai had seen many such people before. Flowers in greenhouses were always unable to withstand the wind and rain. Grinning fiercely, Yang Kai pointed his finger towards Du Rufeng and pushed his space principles, summoning a huge moon blade. Du Rufeng's face changed as his figure flickered and he hurriedly dodged. Yang Kai, however, had already enveloped the entire battlefield with his space principles, shaking his black dragon spear slightly as he shouted, "Open for me." As soon as he finished speaking, the void trembled. Spatial cracks of various sizes suddenly appeared between the heavens and the earth, filling the vast space. The chaotic void aura was emitted from those spatial cracks. Du Rufeng's face turned pale when he saw this. Du Rufeng, next year on this day will be the anniversary of your death. As he roared, Yang Kai rushed out with his spear, enveloping Du Rufeng in a sea of spear shadows. The countless void cracks around Du Rufeng made him want to escape, but how could Yang Kai give him this opportunity? A single spear sealed off all his chances of escape. Forced into a desperate situation, Du Rufeng could only fight Yang Kai to the death. This was what Yang Kai wanted. Du Rufeng was indeed a half-step open the heavens and stronger than him, but his actual combat experience was definitely not as good as his, and his recovery ability was also incomparable. In a life-and-death battle, Yang Kai was not afraid of him. With the heaven-capturing net broken, the only thing he was afraid of now was the shadowless gauze. If Du Rufeng really used it to conceal himself, he would be in a passive position. So, as soon as they began fighting, Yang Kai disregarded consumption and injuries and attacked continuously, making it difficult for Du Rufeng to catch his breath. Silhouettes crisscrossed and blood splattered as time passed by. After an unknown amount of time, Yang Kai suddenly withdrew his spear and stood up, gasping for breath. At this moment, he could no longer maintain his dragon transformation and had returned to his original size. His body was covered with wounds of all sizes, some of which were so deep that even bone could be seen. He looked extremely miserable as he tottered, relying on the black dragon spear to support himself. On the other side, Du Rufeng's situation was not much better. His entire body was dyed red with blood, his hair was disheveled, and he looked like a ghost. His eyes were trembling violently, and his heart was filled with anxiety. While gasping for breath, Du Rufeng said, "Yang Kai, With such a big change in the Chiqiao land, no one knows what the future will be like. Why do the two of us have to fight to the death here? Yang Kai chuckled. We've already fought. What do you want? Du Rufeng said, why don't we just stop here? With such a thing happening, you can't stay in the Chiqiao land anymore. While the Venerable is still busy, it's important to quickly escape. Otherwise, when the Venerable is free, I'm afraid you won't be able to leave even if you want to. That's very reasonable. Yang Kai nodded and tilted his head, then let's make peace. Du Rufeng nodded repeatedly, very good. Before he finished speaking, his expression suddenly changed and he stabbed forward with his sword. With a soft sound, the sword pierced through something. When he looked again, Yang Kai was already in front of him, and the sword in his hand had directly pierced through his chest. Bastard! Du Rufeng cursed. Yang Kai grinned sinisterly, you've schemed against me by every means possible, so how can I let you off so easily? With a sudden force in his hand, Du Rufeng immediately felt a piercing pain coming from his chest. When he looked down, his face turned pale as he saw that his chest was also pierced through by the other party's spear. Collapse! Collapse! Yang Kai slowly spat out these two words, the law of space fluctuating. In an instant, Du Rufeng felt that something in his body had collapsed. In his field of vision, where the spear pierced through, a huge hole suddenly appeared. He slowly raised his head and looked at Yang Kai in disbelief. His eyes were full of longing for life. Yang Kai kicked out and directly sent him flying far away. When the sword was pulled out of his chest, blood spurted out. Yang Kai felt dizzy and almost fainted. He forced himself to stay alert and walked step by step to Du Rufeng, looking down at him from above. Chapter 3890. At this moment, Du Rufeng's eyes were cloudy and the light in them had long since disappeared. His aura was also extremely weak. Yang Kai stared at him coldly and thrust out his spear, causing a head to explode and red and white matter to splatter everywhere. With a flick of his spear, Yang Kai collected Du Rufeng's space ring and, without having time to examine it carefully, staggered off to the side. Not far away, the great general was lying on the ground, his golden fur extremely dim. Yang Kai bent down and picked him up, sweeping him with his divine sense. After examining him carefully, he relaxed. Although the great general's aura was weak, he did not seem to be in any danger. To be honest, Yang Kai had not expected the great general to actually run out of the orchard to find him and save him at a critical moment. Just like how he could not understand why the great general would take such a liking to him, what was it about him that attracted the great general's attention? However, now was not the time to think about such things. While he was fighting with Du Rufeng, the rumbling sounds outside the heavens continued. It was obvious that Old Man Shu was using the Chiqiao Land spirit array to fight against the many heaven-opening realm masters. It was good that there was some movement, but Yang Kai was afraid that there would be no movement at all. Although he did not know if Old Man Shu could succeed in his revenge, now was the best time to leave the Chiqiao Land. However, before that, he had to find Old Fang and Dai Yu first, hoping that they were also safe. Old Man Shu had used the earth-protecting array to attack the Chiqiao Land, so Yang Kai did not know what the situation was like in the orchard. Holding the great general in his arms, Yang Kai had not flown far when he saw two figures flying over side by side. It was Old Fang and Dai Yu. Yang Kai secretly thanked his lucky stars that the two of them had not been affected by the earth-protecting array's attack, otherwise, with their strength, they would not have been able to survive. At this moment, the entire Fire Spirit Land was in chaos, with figures flying around like headless flies. Basically, no one knew what had happened. When they met, Old Fang cried out, "Little brother, how did you end up like this?" Dai Yu also covered her mouth, her beautiful eyes trembling. Such heavy injuries, it's a long story. Yang Kai smiled bitterly and shook his head. Now is not the time to talk about this. Let's leave this place as soon as possible. What's going on? Old Fang asked. Today's events had happened too suddenly. A huge formation rune had appeared in the sky above the Fire Spirit Land, followed by an earth-shattering attack. More than half of the orchard had been destroyed, and 60% of the workers had died in an instant. Old Fang and Dai Yu saw that the situation was bad and quickly ran out. Let's talk on the way. Yang Kai didn't have the time to explain. He pushed his strength and flew upwards. Along the way, Yang Kai briefly explained the situation to Old Fang and Dai Yu. He also mentioned that he was the one who brought Elder Shu here. The two of them stared at him in shock, not expecting such a bizarre thing to happen. However, this was indeed a good opportunity for them to leave the heptashield. Now that the experts of the heptashield were busy dealing with Elder Shu, no one would care about their lives. There were many people with the same idea, and most of them were workers. After all, they had been in the Seven Corners land for a long time and knew that there was no way out. Although the outside world was full of dangers, as long as one dared to risk it, there was still hope. However, as a worker in the Seven Corners land, unless one was willing to degrade themselves and break through to the first grade to open the heavens, there was no chance of success. In all directions, the odd job workers were flying away. However, when they approached the Seven Corners land's barrier, Yang Kai discovered that his thoughts had been too simple. The Seven Corners land's barrier was completely flawless, making it impossible for anyone to escape. Thinking about it, Elder Shu had seized control of the barrier with great difficulty, so how could he give the Seven Corners land's people a chance to escape? The shockwaves from the attacks from the outer heavens were rampant, occasionally striking down, causing the entire fire spirit land to fall into chaos. From time to time, large and small spirit inscriptions would appear in the sky, spurring on the earth, protecting Grand Formation's power and unleashing a barrage of attacks. Yang Kai saw with his own eyes that some workers were unable to dodge in time and were killed by the earth-protecting Grand Formation. Just as Yang Kai's heart was palpitating, he heard a mournful scream from the outer heavens, followed by a violent energy fluctuation that swept through the entire world, causing the fire spirit land to become restless. A moment later, a figure fell from the outer heavens, landing in the place where the workers were gathered. Old Fang's face was pale. "It's the water spirit land's earth-protecting venerable," Dai Yu asked in a trembling voice. "Is he dead?" Old Fang shook his head, indicating he didn't know. Under everyone's watchful eyes, the water spirit land's venerable protector fell straight to the ground and remained motionless for a long time. The many workers glanced at each other, none of them daring to step forward to investigate. At that moment, a streak of light descended from the outer heavens and directly struck the water spirit land's venerable protector, splitting his body in half. This time, there was no need for Old Fang to answer. Everyone knew that this venerable protector was dead. Yang Kai didn't care about his severely injured body and rushed to the corpse of the water spirit land's venerable protector. He took the corpse's space ring and stuffed it into his sleeve before disappearing in a flash. By the time Old Fang and Dai Yu regained their senses, all they could hear was Yang Kai's divine sense message. It wasn't until this moment that the odd job workers finally reacted. One after another, they began to search for traces of Kai Yang, but how could they find him? Space principles fluctuated and Yang Kai's figure flickered, disappearing without a trace. For a moment, everyone was filled with resentment. The wealth of an earth-protecting venerable was unimaginable to these workers. If they had acted a bit faster just now, they might have been able to snatch the space ring, but now someone else had taken advantage of them. Old Fang and Dai Yu quietly withdrew from the crowd and rushed off in a certain direction, soon leaving the fire spirit land and heading towards the city square. The Seven-Way Land's spirit array prevented anyone from leaving, but the inside of the Seven-Way Land was unimpeded. A short time later, the two arrived at a certain corner of the city square. Old Fang glanced around and called out softly, "Yang Kai, Yang Kai." Yang Kai poked his head out from behind a building and beckoned, "Here, here." Old Fang and Dai Yu hurriedly rushed over, but after turning a corner, they saw Yang Kai leaning against a wall covered in blood, his face pale as he gasped for breath, holding Great General Sai Chen in his arms. Old Fang was both angry and amused. "Little brother, you're so greedy that you don't value your life." If those workers had reacted a bit faster just now, Yang Kai wouldn't have been able to escape. As the saying goes, humans die for wealth and birds die for food, so the space ring of an earth-protecting venerable was enough to make anyone go crazy. Yang Kai lightly coughed. "Poor people can only fight with their lives on the line," Dai Yu angrily said. "You call yourself poor?" Yang Kai waved his hand. "Let's not talk about this for now." No one has come to the city square yet and there is no earth protecting array here, so we should be safe here. I need to heal myself for a while. Old Fang nodded solemnly. You can focus on healing yourself. Lady Dai Yu and I will stand guard for you. Then I'll have to trouble you. Yang Kai didn't act polite. In this situation, there was no point in thinking too much. He could only take one step at a time and see if Old Man Shu succeeded in his revenge or if the Seven Openings Land's Venerable would be able to repel the enemy. However, from the scene of the Water Spirit Land's Venerable Protector being killed just now, the Seven Openings Land's Venerable was likely to be in deep trouble. Although Old Man Shu was only one person, with the Seven Openings Land's Earth Protecting Array, he might not necessarily be a match for those people. Yang Kai didn't care much about who won or lost. As long as Duan Hai died, if Duan Hai survived, he wouldn't be able to survive. Taking out a few healing pills from his space ring and stuffing them into his mouth, Yang Kai also gave Great General a few before sitting down cross-legged to adjust his condition. Although the injuries he had suffered this time were serious, they weren't fatal. Yang Kai was clear about his own body, as long as it wasn't too serious, relying on his dragon bloodline and would attribute force's restorative abilities, he would be able to recover sooner or later. The entire market was quiet. After all, it wasn't the first 3 days of the month, so there was naturally no one here. After standing guard for a while, Old Fang seemed to suddenly think of something and said, Lady Dai Yu, I'll be going out for a stroll. You take care of Brother Yang. Hearing this, Dai Yu knew what Old Fang was thinking. She pursed her lips and smiled. Go, be careful. Old Fang grinned meaningfully before disappearing in a flash. Outside, there was a lot of noise. Obviously a fierce battle was going on. Yang Kai's chaotic breathing gradually stabilized, causing Dai Yu to be amazed. An average person who had suffered such serious injuries would need at least 10 days to half a month to recover, but Yang Kai had only taken less than half a day to recover. It had to be said that his physique was incredibly strong. Old Fang returned dejectedly, and when Dai Yu asked, he learned that the market was completely empty, ruining his original idea of picking up some treasures. Yang Kai was still healing, and it was unknown when the battle outside would stop. The two of them didn't know what to do in the future, so they weren't in the mood to talk. After a long time, Yang Kai suddenly opened his eyes and said, Someone's coming. Dai Yu and Old Fang were startled. They quickly scanned the area with their divine senses and soon noticed something. When they looked up, they saw a petite figure flying towards them. As she flew, she carefully looked around as if she was a thief. However, the other party also quickly discovered Yang Kai and the others, hesitating for a moment before flying straight over. Stop right there, Old Fang yelled. Yang Kai raised his hand and said, I know her, there's no need to be nervous. Looking up, he smiled and asked, Why are you here? The newcomer was none other than our son, who had been brought into the Fire Spirit Land by Duan Hai together with Yang Kai. She was quite lucky, there were no visible wounds on her body, so she should have been able to avoid the attack of the Earth-defending array. Our son was pleasantly surprised. Brother Yang, you're also here. Yang Kai said, The Fire Spirit Land is too dangerous, so I came here to hide. Our son nodded repeatedly. I thought so too, it's too chaotic over there. Now, even the Venerable is dead and many of my brothers have been killed. Chapter 3891. A Venerable is dead. Which Venerable died? Dai Yu was surprised. She had seen the Water Spirit Land's Venerable die with her own eyes, but there were 7 Venerables in the entire Chichiao Land. Our son replied, The Venerable of our Fire Spirit Land. Duan Hai. Yang Kai was surprised. You saw him? Our son nodded. I saw him with my own eyes. Yang Kai clenched his fists, silently cursing the death of this Venerable. Now that Duan Hai was dead, no one would know anything about him. Even if Old Man Shu's revenge failed and the Chichiao Land was saved, no one would come looking for trouble with him. However, if there was a chance to leave this place, Yang Kai didn't want to stay any longer. 2 Venerables had died one after the other. One could imagine how fierce the battle outside was. It was a pity he wasn't strong enough now, otherwise he would have gone to take a look. Old Fang Dai Yu and our son weren't familiar with each other, and although Yang Kai wasn't too familiar with her either, this little girl's heart wasn't bad. When they first arrived in the 7 Refinements lands, they had met a few times, so Yang Kai's impression of her wasn't bad. Now that they were hiding in this city together, it could be considered fate. The aftermath of the battle continued to spread, but it hadn't affected the city for the time being, so the 4 of them were safe here. As time passed, more and more people came to this place. Some were servants from various spirit lands, some were disciples of the Chichiao land wearing 7 colored robes. Everyone probably had the same idea. Now that the Chichiao land's great array had been seized, the other places were no longer safe, so this city was the only safe haven. Yang Kai had already taken off his 7 colored robes and changed into his normal clothes, making them less conspicuous. The battle continued for more than 10 days without stopping, causing more and more people to hide in the city. Everyone was on tenterhooks, afraid that they would be caught in the crossfire. At a certain moment, more than 10 days later, a ray of light suddenly appeared above the dark city. Everyone looked up and saw that the hazy sky seemed to have been torn open by someone, and the light was coming from this hole. The great array has been broken. It was unknown who shouted, but soon after, a group of figures rushed into the hole in the sky and disappeared. Yang Kai and the others looked at each other, their faces filled with joy. Without any hesitation, the 4 of them activated their powers and followed the crowd into the sky. The formation that covered the entire Chichiao land was indeed broken. It was unknown whether it was because Elder Shu had used too much of the formation's power or because the experts of the Chichiao land were too powerful. Without the barrier, no one could stop them from escaping. After leaving Chichiao land, Yang Kai didn't know where to go. Anyway, he just kept flying forward. At this time, the further away he was from Chichiao land, the better. Dai Yu, Old Fang, and her son followed him without a word. The 3 of them had no place to go, so it was the same wherever they went. After the initial surprise, Dai Yu and Old Fang couldn't help but fall into a daze. After the 2 of them jumped out of their own universe world, they had been brought to Chichiao land and hadn't left for many years. Now that they had luckily escaped from Chichiao land, where should they go in the future? Especially since the 2 of them still hadn't broken through to heaven opening after so many years. In this vast universe, those who hadn't broken through to heaven opening were nothing. After flying forward for several days, they passed through the endless void along the way. Without any reference point, the 4 of them had no idea where they were at this moment. At this moment, Kai Yang suddenly sensed something. Turning his head to look, his face turned pale with fright. Run! Old Fang and the others didn't know what was going on and turned their heads to look as well. Their expressions changed drastically as they saw a streak of light rapidly approaching them. Based on the brightness and speed of the light, it was obvious that this person was a heaven-opening expert. They didn't know what heaven-opening realm this person was at, but no matter what heaven-opening realm this person was at, it wasn't something they could contend against. The group changed directions several times, but the streak of light behind them was like a maggot that stuck to their bones. No matter how they changed directions, the streak of light continued to follow them, and the distance between them was rapidly closing. Just as everyone was panicking, Yang Kai let out a miserable cry and suddenly stopped. Dai Yu was shocked. What's wrong? Hurry up and run. Yang Kai smiled bitterly. I can't run. When he had sensed that someone was chasing them, he didn't know who it was, but now he knew. The one chasing after him was actually Elder Shu. He still had the black flying centipede on him. Just now, his Dao seal had been strangled by the centipede mark. It was clearly a warning from Elder Shu. If he continued to run, he might even lose his life. Yang Kai couldn't figure out how Elder Shu had found him after running so far away. He reckoned that it was most likely the work of the flying blackback centipede. This thing was a strange insect that Elder Shu had kept in captivity, so there should be some kind of spiritual connection between them. It wasn't surprising that Elder Shu had relied on it to find him. But why would Elder Shu appear here? Shouldn't he be fighting those venerables and heavenly monarchs in the Kikichiao land? Running here at this time, could it be that he had failed? If it was a blessing, it wouldn't be a disaster. If it was a disaster, it couldn't be avoided. Yang Kai was furious, but he could only stand there and wait. He looked at Old Fang and the others and said, "Hurry up and run." Old Fang hurriedly said, "Take care." With that, He continued to run forward. However, Dayu didn't move. Yang Kai turned to look at her. Dayu smiled and said, "If he really wants to do anything to us, I'm afraid we can't run away. If we join forces with you, we might be able to fight." Yang Kai didn't believe her. If they ran, there was still a glimmer of hope. If they didn't run, they could only leave their lives to Elder Shu. Our son didn't know if she was stupid or what, but she nodded and said, "I'll go too." Yang Kai was speechless. On the other side, Old Fang, who had run a short distance, flew back and stood beside Yang Kai. He said angrily, "You're going to get us killed this time." Yang Kai couldn't help but laugh. While they were talking, Elder Shu had already flown close to them. Yang Kai cupped his fists and was about to greet him when Elder Shu waved his hand. The Rui 6 Harmonies pouch appeared and covered everyone. In the next moment, their vision turned black as they were sucked into the pouch. Old Fang cried out in surprise, "What's going on?" He was sucked in without even seeing what the enemy looked like, so he didn't know the mystery of the Rui 6 Harmonies pouch. Our son said, "It's so crowded. Where is this?" Dayu panicked. Who touched me? Whose hand is this?" Yang Kai coughed softly. "Sorry, I didn't do it on purpose. Everyone, don't move. This place is like this. Just bear with it." The pouch suddenly quieted down. No one dared to move. Suddenly, there was a loud sound, followed by a stench. Our son retched. Who farted?" Old Fang hurriedly clarified. "I didn't." Dayu also said, "It wasn't me. Brother Yang, you." Yang Kai was furious. "It was the general. It's not my fault. You idiot. If it wasn't for the inconvenience, he would have beaten it up." In the enclosed space, the stench lingered for a long time. No one dared to breathe. After some time, the skylight suddenly appeared. Yang Kai's vision blurred and he suddenly appeared in a strange space. In this space, the power of yin, yang, and 5 elements were reversed and conflicting with each other. It was so chaotic that it felt like it was going to collapse at any moment. This was a small universe, and it seemed to be the small universe inside Elder Shu's body. The small universe was in chaos, which meant that Elder Shu's situation was not good. Turning his head, he saw Elder Shu sitting cross-legged on the side with a weak aura, looking at him indifferently. Yang Kai hurriedly cupped his hands. Elder Shu. From the outside, it wasn't obvious that Elder Shu had suffered any injuries, but after fighting for so many days, it was impossible for him not to be injured. Moreover, Yang Kai estimated that his plan for revenge had failed, otherwise, he wouldn't have appeared here. If he had succeeded, he should have taken over the 7 openings. After expending so much energy to take revenge and failing in the end, Yang Kai didn't know what Elder Shu's mood was right now, but it definitely wasn't good, so he spoke with caution. Elder Shu stared at him, a complicated look flashing across his eyes. After a long time, he slowly said, "Boy, you ruined my plans." Yang Kai was stunned. "Elder Shu, why would you say that? I have never leaked any information about you in the 7 openings." Elder Shu sighed. "Although you didn't leak anything, the flying blackback centipede had already been exposed. As long as Duan Hai followed the clues, he would have found this king's whereabouts within 3 or 5 days, so this king could only act ahead of time. This." Yang Kai was also speechless. This junior also didn't expect such a thing to happen. This could all be said to be a coincidence. Duan Hai and Yu Lian wanted to seize his wood attribute power and arrange a large spirit array, but they ended up triggering the flying blackback centipede spirit array. Elder Shu had sensed this and had no choice but to act ahead of time, but judging from Elder Shu's current state and his previous words, the result of acting ahead of time had been failure. If I had been given half a year, how could such a situation have occurred? Elder Shu coldly snorted. Yang Kai gulped and stared ahead vigilantly. What does Elder Shu want to do? Kill me. If killing you could change the facts, this king would not have allowed you to live until now. Unfortunately, this old master's 1,000-year plan failed at the last moment. Hearing this, Yang Kai's heart relaxed. There was no longer any danger to his life, but now that he had fallen into Elder Shu's hands, it was like leaving the wolf's den and entering the tiger's den. Yang Kai didn't know how he would be tortured in the future. If he had known this would happen, he would not have run out. Although his future in the Seven Openings land was bleak, he was now the manager of the orchard and had a large number of subordinates. Now that the Seven Openings land had suffered heavy losses, they were in dire need of manpower. If he had stayed, he might have been able to find a better way out. Elder Shu coldly snorted again. Although this king's plan failed, they did not have a good time either. Most of their venerables died and the Seven Openings land was seriously injured. They will need at least a few dozen years to recover. That's not a complete loss. Yang Kai insincerely congratulated him. This time the Seven Openings land's strength has been greatly reduced. Elder Shu only needs to go back and recuperate for a while. When he makes a comeback in the future, he will be able to get his revenge. Chapter 3892. Haha, making a comeback. Elder Shu let out a strange laugh. I'm afraid I won't have that chance. Yang Kai asked curiously, what do you mean, Elder Shu? I'm going to die. Yang Kai was shocked. How could that be? Elder Shu didn't look like he was injured at all. Although Yang Kai knew that he was injured, he didn't expect his injuries to be so serious that they were life-threatening. Elder Shu didn't explain anything to him and casually threw something to him. Yang Kai caught it and found that it was a piece of jade. He asked suspiciously, what is this? The sigil of the Kikichiao formation, Elder Shu said calmly. With this sigil, you will have the chance to control the Kikichiao formation. Yang Kai's heart skipped a beat. Although he didn't refine it, he could still feel the mysterious fluctuations in the jade in his hand. He knew that Elder Shu wasn't lying. This could really be the sigil of the Chichiao formation. Elder Shu was able to seize the Chichiao formation back then because of this item. I've given it to you. You can throw it away or keep it. It's up to you. There was such a good thing. Yang Kai was shocked. From his previous contact with Elder Shu, this guy wasn't a good person. Could it be that people would become kind before they died? Elder Shu said, I don't have the strength to spare for revenge. However, if you have the chance to grow in the future, you can take this jade to seize the Chichiao formation. There will be a chance of success. Don't worry, if the Chichiao formation wants to change the formation, it won't be done in a short period of time. This jade will be useful for at least 1,000 years. After that, it's hard to say. Hearing him say this, the doubts in Kai Yang's heart were relieved. Elder Shu wanted him to help him take revenge. The sigil of the formation was in his hands. The Chichiao formation was such a big piece of meat. If he had enough power, he would definitely covet it. It was also because of this that Elder Shu did not vent his anger on him. Otherwise, he would have killed him long ago. Even if he killed him now, it would only be to vent his anger. If he kept him alive, he might still have a chance to take revenge. Thinking of this, Yang Kai hurriedly put away the jade and solemnly cupped his fists. Don't worry, Elder Shu. Within 1,000 years, I will definitely advance to split the heavens. At that time, I will return to the Seven Refinements land. No matter what, this attitude had to be displayed. As for whether or not he would help Old Man Shu take revenge in the future, that would depend on whether or not he had the mood to do so. Although Kai Yang's impression of the Chichiao lands wasn't very good, he hadn't wasted much time here. Those who wanted to harm him had all died, so there really wasn't any deep hatred between them. Elder Shu was non-committal. He probably sensed Yang Kai's thoughts, but he didn't have much time left. He couldn't do anything to Yang Kai. He just nodded and closed his eyes. As soon as he closed his eyes, his aura rapidly weakened. At the same time, the small universe that was on the verge of collapse began to disintegrate at a speed visible to the naked eye. The yin, yang, and 5 elements energy became chaotic. Yang Kai anxiously said, Elder Shu, you can take that flying blackback centipede back. Elder Shu did not respond. A moment later, the small universe completely collapsed. Yang Kai's vision blurred and he appeared in a void. Not far in front of him, Elder Shu was sitting cross-legged. Unfortunately, there was not the slightest trace of life on his body. Kai Yang stretched out his hand to check his breathing and found that Old Man Shu was indeed dead. He suddenly felt a headache coming on. The flying black-backed centipede in the Dao seal was raised by Old Man Shu, so he didn't know how Old Man Shu's death would affect it. He stood in place vigilantly for a long time, but there was no reaction. Only then did Yang Kai relax. However, with that thing in the Dao seal, Yang Kai really did not feel safe. Before, there was still Elder Shu to restrict him, but now that Elder Shu was no longer here, if the flying blackback centipede lost control one day and did whatever it wanted in the Dao seal, he would not even know how he died. Yang Kai even suspected that Elder Shu had given the flying blackback centipede some kind of order before his death. If he did not go to the Chichiao land to avenge him in the future, it would activate. This was very likely, otherwise, why would Elder Shu leave him alive? However, now that Elder Shu had passed away, worrying about it was useless. He could only think of breaking through to splitting the heavens as soon as possible and find a way to expel it himself. Reaching out and taking off Elder Shu's space ring, Yang Kai could not find the 6-unity wish pouch. He searched Elder Shu's body for a while and found the pouch in his sleeve. Fortunately, he had refined the 6-unity wish pouch before, so although he could not use it to defend against enemies, opening and closing it was not a problem. Forming a seal, Yang Kai opened the pouch. Elder Fang, Dai Yu, our son, and the great general all appeared. As soon as Elder Fang Yu appeared, he cupped his fists and said, "Greetings, senior." Yang Kai said, "He's dead." He's dead." Elder Fang raised his head in shock and carefully looked at Elder Shu. Finding that he was indeed dead, he could not help but ask, "How did he die?" Yang Kai said, "Probably because his injuries were too serious." Dai Yu asked, "Is he the one who attacked in the Chichiao land?" Yang Kai nodded, "That's him." Elder Fang let out a long breath. It's good that he's dead. If he really accompanied such a master, he would be very nervous. If he was in a bad mood and took it out on him, he would not be able to resist encountering such an accident on the way to escape, but fortunately, Old Man Shu was seriously injured and died, so nothing else happened. Yang Kai collected Old Man Shu's body and put it into his sealed world bead, secretly instructing Mu Zhu and Mu Lu to give it a proper burial. He didn't know if Old Man Shu had left behind any kind of backup plan, so leaving his body here was just a precaution. "Let's go." Yang Kai took care of the matter and called out to everyone. Naturally, no one objected, but the great general did not move. Previously, the great general blocked Du Rufeng's fierce blow for Yang Kai and was seriously injured. He had been in a state of recovery and had woken up at this time, but instead of following Yang Kai, he kept shouting something at Yang Kai. Yang Kai did not understand and turned his head to look at him. The great general shouted for a while, but seeing that Yang Kai was still indifferent, he flapped his wings and flew behind Yang Kai, using his fat body to push him in a certain direction. Elder Fang said curiously, "Brother, he seems to want you to go somewhere." Yang Kai also noticed and reached out to grab the great general from behind, asking, "Where are you taking me?" The great general nodded and turned his head to look in a certain direction. Yang Kai looked in that direction but could not see anything. After pondering for a moment, he said, "The great general should have something to do. I'm going to follow him. What about you guys?" Dai Yu and the others looked at each other and Elder Fang said, "We don't know where to go anyway, so we'll go with you. At least we can take care of each other." "Then let's go together." Dai Yu also nodded. Our son never had any ideas, so she naturally did not refute. So, Yang Kai put the great general on his head and let him lead the way, and the four of them continued to fly through the vast universe. The road ahead was long, and Yang Kai had nothing to do, so he quietly counted the gains of these days. He had to admit that since he was summoned by Du Rufeng, although the days had been dangerous, his harvest had been huge. First, he collected Du Rufeng's space ring, then Water Spirit Earth Protector's space ring, and then Old Man Shu's space ring. Not to mention anything else, the 6 Directions wish bag was a rare treasure. Until now, besides the sealed world bead and the One Realm bead he had refined, Yang Kai had never seen an artifact that could hold living creatures. The 6 Directions wish bag was the first. After entering this world, his strength could not keep up for the time being, so he could only rely on the power of artifacts. Although the artifacts he obtained in the star boundary were good, they could not keep up with the pace here. Whether it was the mountains and rivers bell or the soul-splitting saber, they could deal with the Emperor realm, but it would be difficult to deal with a heaven-opening realm master. Now that he had obtained the 6 directions wish bag, it made up for this shortcoming. He had to refine it as soon as possible, so when he encountered a strong enemy later, it might play a miraculous role. Going through the space rings one after another, young Kai found a great harvest. Just the heaven-opening pills alone numbered 300,000. Of these, there were only a few tens of thousands in Du Rufeng's space ring, while the rest were basically all taken from the space rings of the Water Spirit Land's venerable Earth Protector. Yang Kai truly understood what it felt like to become rich overnight. Previously, he had painstakingly collected insects to feed the Great General, but after a month, he had only managed to collect a few thousand heaven-opening pills. Now that he had obtained 300,000 heaven-opening pills, he felt a heavy burden. However, thinking about it carefully, a third-grade heaven-opening material cost more than 15,000 heaven-opening pills, so these 300,000 heaven-opening pills could only buy a few fourth-grade materials. He couldn't even afford a fifth-grade heaven-opening material, so it wasn't a big deal. In addition, the fourth-grade Scarlet Sky Golden Flame that he had helped Du Rufeng collect was also taken back. This thing was a hard currency, and as long as he could find a suitable channel, he could easily exchange it for over 100,000 heaven-opening pills. What surprised young Kai the most though was the shadowless muslin he had found in Du Rufeng's space ring. Yang Kai had experienced the strange ability of this thing before. It allowed one to conceal themselves, making it impossible to detect even if they were close by. Du Rufeng had also said that the shadowless muslin was a gift from a venerable, so any heaven-opening cultivator under the 3rd grade would not be able to detect it. Even if it was a mid-rank heaven-opening cultivator, as long as they did not search carefully, they could still miss it. Compared to the 6 directions wish bag, this shadowless muslin was the most suitable for him at the moment. If he didn't have enough strength, he wouldn't be able to resist a powerful enemy, so the shadowless muslin might be able to save his life in many cases. Old Man Shu's space ring was relatively poor. Besides the strange wooden sword, there were only some random materials inside. Thinking about it, this wasn't surprising. Old Man Shu had been focused on revenge all these years, so he probably didn't have the time or energy to do anything else. However, there was one thing that young Kai was quite curious about. According to his understanding, the Chichiao land should have originally belonged to Old Man Shu, but for some unknown reason, it was snatched away. What was the reason that Old Man Shu couldn't even protect his own territory? However, there was no place for young Kai to ask. Old Man Shu was already dead, so who could he ask? Chapter 3893. After tidying up the contents of the 3 space rings, young Kai took out the shadowless gauze and held it in his hand, silently refining it. This was originally Du Rufeng's possession and had his soul imprint on it, but now that Du Rufeng was dead, the soul imprint could be easily erased. None of the group spoke along the way. After experiencing such a big change, none of them seemed to be in the mood to talk, all of them quietly following behind Great General, allowing him to lead them in a certain direction. Time passed by, and after flying for an unknown amount of time, young Kai estimated that it had been at least 2 or 3 months, but Great General showed no signs of stopping. Along the way, they did not encounter any great dangers. Occasionally, there would be some natural disasters such as starbursts, but they were all avoided in advance. Until one day, a small black dot suddenly appeared at the edge of their field of vision. At this time, young Kai clearly felt that something was wrong with Great General's mood, as if he had become much more excited, causing his flying speed to increase significantly. The distance was too great, so young Kai couldn't see what this black dot was. It was not until a long time later that young Kai realized it was actually a huge world fragment. He didn't know which universe world it had been left behind, but it was quite large and desolate. The Grand General led the group towards the fragment of the world. A day later, the group of 4 landed on this world fragment. Looking around, all they saw was endless desolation, without the slightest trace of life. Great General flapped his wings and continued to lead the way. Old Fang looked around curiously and asked, "Why did Great General lead us here?" "I don't know," young Kai shook his head, "we'll know once we follow him. Not to mention anything else, Just based on how Great General had desperately blocked Du Rufeng's attack for him, if something really happened to him, Yang Kai would not just sit back and watch. Great General seemed to be very familiar with this place. After arriving here, he directly flew in a certain direction and soon arrived in front of a barren mountain. Inside this mountain, there was a deep dark cave that led to some unknown destination. Standing at the entrance, one could vaguely hear the sound of wind whistling. Sweeping the cave with his divine sense, Yang Kai found that he could not see the end. This cave was obviously very deep. After arriving here, Great General's footsteps finally stopped and he turned his head towards Yang Kai and let out a cry. Yang Kai understood and turned back to Old Fang and the others. "I'll go down with Great General and have a look. You stay here and wait for me." Although Yang Kai did not believe that Great General would harm him, it was still best to be careful in this unknown place. If he went down alone, he would have a chance of escaping if he encountered danger, but it would be inconvenient for him to bring Old Fang, Daiyu, and the others. Dai's uses group. Yang Kai nodded his head. Of Yang Kai's the caves, of Yang of you, me, you, you, me, you as Yang. Yang's A's to Great Yang. Yang was. And was. Of course, Yang's to Rufeng's. To Yang S was. Yang. After descending for a full 2 hours, Yang Kai even suspected that he had reached the deepest part of this world fragment. Only then did the environment around him suddenly open up. This was a huge underground cave. There was nothing special about this cave, but after arriving here, the Great General was obviously excited and immediately jumped out of Yang Kai's arms. As he flew forward, he cried out loudly, his voice giving off a very strange feeling, one that was both a little aggrieved and a little nostalgic. Yang Kai frowned. He did not know what was so special about this place that made Great General react like this. But before he could figure it out, he sensed an aura coming from the depths of the cave. There was a living thing here. He had not sensed it when he entered. Yang Kai was shocked. He held his breath and looked forward. He could not see anything, but he could clearly feel an aura coming back to life. It was as if the aura had just fallen into a deep sleep. Now, it was awakened by Great General. What made Yang Kai's hair stand on end was that this aura was very strong. It was more dangerous than Elder Shu. This meant that the owner of this aura was stronger than Elder Shu. In the darkness, 2 lights suddenly shone. Yang Kai's blood turned cold. He was frozen in place as if someone had cast a spell on him. He stared at the 2 lights in a daze. What kind of light was that? It was clearly 2 eyes, 2 incomparably huge eyes, each of which was the size of a house. As the pair of eyes opened, a layer of golden light slowly flashed in the dark cave. The golden light grew from weak to strong and soon filled the entire space, illuminating the entire cave with golden light. Yang Kai's mouth was wide open. He could not close it for a long time. The shock in his heart could not be any greater. If he had not seen it with his own eyes, he would not have believed what he was seeing. In his field of vision, there was a huge golden pheasant lying in the cave. That golden pheasant looked exactly the same as Great General Sai Chen. However, its body was many times bigger. It was like an enlarged version of Great General Sai Chen. Whether it was the aura from before, the dazzling golden light, or the house-sized eyes, they all belonged to this huge golden pheasant. At this moment, Great General Sai Chen had already pounced in front of the strange beast. It was crying out non-stop. The strange beast's fierce eyes slowly became gentle. It was filled with love. It lowered its head and gently nudged Great General Sai Chen. Great General cried out even louder. He flew onto the strange beast's head and used his beak to comb its feathers. Seeing this, how could Yang Kai not understand? The enlarged golden pheasant in front of him was definitely Great General Sai Chen's close relative. He did not know if it was its father or mother. The chances of it being its mother were higher. Great General Sai Chen had come to find his family. Yang Kai had long felt that Great General Sai Chen was not an ordinary golden pheasant and should be some kind of strange beast with a strange bloodline. Now that he had seen its mother, this idea could be confirmed. Since Great General Sai Chen had a close relative, how could it have become Duan Hai's pet in the Fire Spirit Land? And looking at its mother, it was obvious that her strength was not ordinary. Duan Hai was definitely not her opponent, so how did Duan Hai manage to take Great General away? Could it have been Duan Hai who took it away? Thinking about it, it was not impossible. If not, why would Great General Sai Chen ignore Duan Hai's life and death and instead follow him out of the Chiqiao land? Just as he was thinking this, Yang Kai suddenly heard a voice. "Junior, thou'st an aura I hate." Yang Kai was startled. The voice sounded directly in his mind. It sounded gentle and beautiful. It was a woman's voice, but the meaning of the words was not so beautiful. He looked up and saw that the giant golden rooster in front of him was looking down at him. Its eyes, which were the size of a house, reflected his figure. Yang Kai swallowed a mouthful of saliva and looked left and right. Finally, he fixed his gaze in front of him and asked carefully, "Are you talking to me?" Old Lady Sai Chen's eyes narrowed slightly and flashed with a dangerous aura. "What do you think?" Yang Kai's mouth twitched and he quickly cupped his fists. "Junior Yang Kai greets Senior. May I ask Senior's name?" "I am Mie Meng." "So it is Senior Mie Meng. I have heard so much about you." Yang Kai cupped his hands again. He did not know if Mie Meng was her name or her race, but he had never heard of it before. However, this world was full of strange things, so it was normal to see things that he had never seen before. The only thing he could be sure of was that old Lady Sai Chen was not to be trifled with. However, although she said that he had an aura she hated, Yang Kai was not too worried. Since he had brought Sai Chen back, she should not do anything to him. Mie Meng quietly looked at Yang Kai, her huge eyes filled with mockery. Above her head, Grand General Sai Chen was muttering something. Mie Meng listened carefully and after a long time, she nodded slightly. "I understand." She then lowered her head and looked at Yang Kai. "My son said that it was all thanks to you that he was able to leave that place and return to my side." Yang Kai said firmly, "The Grand General and I felt like old friends the moment we met, and we are as close as brothers. Such a small matter is not worth mentioning." After pausing for a while, he asked curiously, "Senior, how did the Grand General end up in Kikichiao?" Mie Meng said, "He was kidnapped. My son was young and did not know how dangerous the outside world was. He accidentally got lost when he went out to play." "I see." Yang Kai nodded slightly. This was similar to what he had expected. Since Sai Chen had such a strong mother, he should not have gone to Chiqiao to be Duan Hai's pet. It was obvious that he had been kidnapped. Mie Meng guessed that Sai Chen did not have a good impression of Duan Hai, which was why he did not care whether Duan Hai was dead or alive. Instead, he came to look for Yang Kai. At this time, Elder Fang sent a message. It seemed that the few of them had also sensed Mie Meng's aura and were worried about Yang Kai's safety, so they came to ask about it. Yang Kai replied and told them to stay outside. Only when he was safe did they feel relieved. After keeping the communication device, Yang Kai said, "Senior, now that Sai Chen is back, you have reunited with your son. It is time for me to leave. Let us meet again in the future." Although he wanted to get some benefits from Mie Meng, since he brought Sai Chen back, even if he did not contribute much, he still felt uneasy when facing such a powerful being. Even if he knew that she would not do anything to him, it was better to leave first. Mie Meng's voice was pleasant to the ears, but who knew what her temper was like? If she was temperamental, he would not be able to leave even if he wanted to. "Don't be in a hurry to leave," Mie Meng said. "I need you to do me a favor." Yang Kai was stunned. "How can I help you?" "Help me leave this place." "Senior, are you trapped?" Yang Kai was surprised. He did not notice this. However, thinking about it carefully, from the beginning until now, Mie Meng had not moved at all. It seemed like she was really trapped. "But I am weak. I am afraid I am powerless." Chapter 3894. To be able to trap Mie Meng, it had to be someone stronger than her. Yang Kai did not think that he could help her. Mie Meng said, "As long as you want to." Since it had already come to this point, Kai Yang reckoned that he couldn't refuse. Feeling a bit bored, he frowned and asked, "Then what does Senior want me to do?" Mie Meng didn't answer, but the golden light on his body suddenly flickered. As the golden light flickered, Yang Kai clearly saw something that looked like chains appear, binding Meng's huge body tightly. From these chains, Yang Kai felt a strange aura. Dragon race. Yang Kai raised his eyebrows in surprise. Who would have thought that Meng was trapped because of the secret skill of the dragon tribe? Only the dragon tribe could use the secret skill of the dragon tribe. Yang Kai said excitedly, "Have you met a dragon race before?" Meng sneered, "If not, why would I be trapped here?" It was funny to hear a golden rooster call himself I, but Yang Kai was not in the mood to care about that. He asked anxiously, "When did you meet a dragon race, and where did you meet it?" He was also a dragon race. If he could find another dragon race outside of Qiankuan, he would have found the organization. He would not have to run around like a headless fly. He might even be able to find the world tree with the help of the dragon race. Then, it would be much easier. "We met in the star field and had a conflict. I don't know where that stupid dragon is now, but there is no one good in the dragon race," Meng sneered. Yang Kai was speechless. He was being scolded as well. But now, he knew what Meng wanted him to help with. The dragon race secret technique could be used by a dragon race, but it could also be removed by a dragon race. If Meng wanted to escape, he might be able to help. But there was one thing that Yang Kai was curious about. "How do you know that I am a dragon?" Yang Kai thought that he did not reveal any flaws. Meng said coldly, "Normal people might not be able to sense the dragon race's aura, but I can. That is why my son brought you here." When Yang Kai heard this, he suddenly understood why Great General Sai Chen favored him so much. Back in the Fire Spirit Land, Great General Sai Chen treated him differently from the others. Then, he helped him block Du Rufeng's attack. Now, he even took the trouble to bring him here. It turned out that Great General Sai Chen had sensed the dragon vein aura on him and knew that he could help his mother. Meng continued, "However, you don't seem to be a pure dragon. Whether or not you can help depends on the purity of your bloodline." Yang Kai frowned. "What does this junior need to do?" "I need your dragon's blood." Kai Yang asked again, "What can this junior obtain?" "What do you want?" Meng's eyes flashed with mockery. "That depends on what you can give me." Although he got along well with General Sai Chen, he was not related to his mother. If he helped him this time, he would have to sacrifice a lot. He had to get some benefits first. Meng looked at him seriously for a while. Suddenly, he stretched his neck and stuck his head out. Yang Kai was shocked. He wanted to dodge, but Meng had already pecked and retracted his head. He did not even have time to react. At the same time, Yang Kai felt that something was missing from his body. It was as if he had broken free from a layer of restraint. There was a strange sound. Yang Kai looked in the direction of the sound. There was a black centipede in Meng's mouth. It was struggling. The strange sound was made by the black centipede. Flying black centipede. Yang Kai's eyes widened as he hurriedly examined his body. The centipede mark that originally existed in his Dao seal had disappeared without a trace. Looking at the black-backed centipede in Meng's mouth, how could Yang Kai not know that Elder Shu's trick had been broken by Meng? He was overjoyed and cupped his hands. "Thank you, Senior." Although Old Man Shu was already dead, the presence of this thing in the Dao seal was really unsettling. Yang Kai had planned to find a way to get rid of it after he broke through to the heaven-splitting realm, but who would have thought that this flying blackback centipede would be so easily removed by Meng? This effortless action made Yang Kai deeply aware of Meng's strength, and he couldn't help imagining just how tyrannical the dragon race who could trap Meng with their dragon race secret technique was. Meng raised his neck and swallowed the black centipede. He said calmly, "Is this enough?" "Enough, enough." Yang Kai nodded. Meng had done him a huge favor, so it was only right for him to return the favor. Without hesitation, Yang Kai said, "As for what you want me to do, please tell me, Senior. I only need your dragon blood. The more the better. I will deal with the rest. But before that, I want to see if your dragon blood is pure enough. If it is not, it will be useless even if I drain your blood." Yang Kai didn't waste any time and simply cut a small wound on his finger, forcing out a drop of blood before wrapping it in his Saint Chi and sending it to Meng. Swallowing it down, Meng's originally slightly squinted eyes suddenly widened as he stared at Yang Kai in astonishment, a strange light flashing across his eyes. Does Junior's blood meet the requirements? Yang Kai asked. Yes. Meng nodded. Then, shall we begin? Yang Kai looked at him. Meng said, use your dragon blood to smear the chains on my body. You don't have to worry about the rest. As she spoke, the chains appeared on her body again. Yang Kai observed for a while and was speechless. Meng's body was huge. The chains wrapped around her body. It would take a lot of blood to smear all over her body. However, Yang Kai had already accepted the other party's kindness, so he naturally wouldn't back down. Taking a deep breath, he shouted, "Dragon transformation." Amidst a series of crackling sounds, Yang Kai's figure quickly transformed into a 2,000-meter-long dragon, one that was not inferior to Meng's in size. A powerful dragon aura spread from his body as he was covered in dragon scales, dragon horns on his head, and a lifelike dragon tail behind him. Meng was even more surprised. Taking a step forward, Yang Kai arrived in front of Meng in just a few steps. Forming a claw with one hand, Yang Kai clawed at the palm of his other hand, causing blood to spurt out. Reaching out, Yang Kai grabbed one of the chains and stroked it from head to tail. The chain was immediately covered in golden dragon blood. As if stimulated by the dragon blood, a dragon's roar could be heard from the chain. It shone brightly. Yang Kai didn't pay any attention to him and simply did the same thing as before, grabbing the other chains. It was a good thing to have a strong recovery ability. However, it was a little troublesome now. The wound on Yang Kai's palm showed signs of healing. He had no choice but to cut his own palm. The dragon blood kept flowing out. The chains were soon covered in golden blood, and the light flickered more and more urgently. Meng's eyes were filled with excitement. After being trapped for so many years, he was just trying to break free. He never thought that he would actually have a chance to break free. How could he not be excited? In less than half an incense's time, the chains outside Meng's body were covered in dragon blood. Even though Yang Kai's body was strong, he could not take it anymore. He had paid a huge price this time. He would need to rest for a while to recover. Enough. Meng suddenly said. Yang Kai relaxed. He could no longer maintain the dragon form. His body shrunk rapidly and he returned to his original form. You take my son out first. Meng turned to Yang Kai and ordered. Sai Chen Great General flapped his wings and flew over to Yang Kai. Yang Kai caught him and without hesitation summoned his azure dragon spear and soared into the sky. Wherever the long spear passed, it was as easy as crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood, forcibly opening up a passage from underground. With a rumbling sound, Yang Kai broke free from the ground. Not far away, Old Fang and the others heard the commotion and turned to look. Before they could ask, Yang Kai shouted, "Let's go." Old Fang and the others were stunned, but they did not have time to say anything. They immediately followed behind him and flew into the sky. After flying a great distance away, Yang Kai stopped and turned around to look back, but the world fragment was still silent, not showing any signs of movement. What happened? Dai Yu asked in bewilderment. General Sai's mother is here. She's trying to break free. Yang Kai did not have the time to explain and answered casually. General Sai's mother? Old Fang was stunned. He looked at the stupid chicken in Yang Kai's arms. As soon as he said that, he heard a loud noise coming from afar. He turned to look and was shocked. The huge world fragment was vibrating non-stop, and there seemed to be violent energy bursting out from within. Even standing here, he could clearly feel the fierce and powerful aura. In front of such an aura, he was as small as an ant. Old Fang was shocked. Is this caused by General Sai's mother? He thought that if the general was so strong, then his mother would not be so strong either. But now, it seemed that the general's mother was more than strong. Before Yang Kai could say anything, he heard a loud noise. A violent energy erupted and the world fragment shattered into pieces, shooting in all directions. Among the scattered fragments, there was a dazzling golden light. When the dust settled, a giant golden rooster came into view. It raised its head and puffed out its chest, looking majestic like a full sun. Its fierce aura made the world tremble. Old Fang gulped, and his teeth chattered. "Great General, is this your mother?" The general ignored him. In the distance, Meng had broken free. He spread his wings and screeched. His voice was so sharp that it made people's eardrums tremble. The invisible sound waves turned into a violent energy that pushed people back. After a long time, Meng retracted his wings and stopped. He walked over step by step. Old Fang's face was pale. He secretly sent a message to Yang Kai. "What's her name?" "She calls herself Meng." Yang Kai replied. Old Fang understood. Before Meng could get close, he cupped his hands and shouted, "Junior Fang Biki greets Senior Meng." Chapter 3895. Dai Yu and our son hurriedly bowed as well. Meng scanned the crowd and fixed his gaze on Yang Kai. He nodded slightly and transmitted his voice, "Thank you." Yang Kai cupped his fists and said, "Senior, you are too polite. You have also helped me a lot. We both got what we needed." Meng said, "It is best not to let others know that you have the dragon bloodline." Yang Kai was stunned. "Why is that?" Meng sneered, "The dragon race has many enemies in the greater thousand worlds. If those people who have a grudge against the dragon race know that you have the dragon bloodline, what do you think will happen to you?" Yang Kai felt a chill in his heart and said seriously, "I will remember that. Thank you for your reminder." If that was the case, it would not be convenient for him to use the dragon form secret technique casually in the future. At the very least, he would not be able to use it casually before he grew up. Otherwise, he might cause some trouble. The arrogance of the dragon race was something that Yang Kai had experienced when he was in the star boundary. The dragon race outside of the Qian Kuan realm would not be any better. Meng continued, "However, the dragon race is a very united race. Although they are all secretive, if something happens to you, the other dragon race will definitely take revenge for you. Therefore, if you really meet with any unavoidable danger, you might as well reveal your dragon bloodline. Perhaps others will not dare to attack you." Yang Kai cupped his fists. "I understand." He paused for a while and said, "Senior, if I want to find other dragon race, where should I go?" Meng snorted, "I have already said that the dragon race is secretive. Even if you want to find them, you will not be able to find them. However, I heard that the dragon race has a dragon altar. That is the headquarters of the dragon race and is also the origin of the dragon race. However, no one knows where the dragon altar is. Only the dragon race themselves know where it is. Perhaps one day, you will be able to sense the location of the dragon altar. Improve the bloodline." Yang Kai was slightly dazed. If he wanted to improve his bloodline, he had to continue activating the origin of the golden divine dragon in his body. Although Yang Kai was already 2,000 feet tall, he could feel that the origin of the dragon race in his body was not fully activated. He still had a lot of room for growth. But the growth of the dragon race required a long time, and he could not wait. He could not afford to wait. Great Emperor Mie, he could not wait. The dragon Great Emperor. He could not wait. The dragon was the dragon. He was. And he. The great general jumped out of Yang Kai's arms and flapped its wings, flying up and down in front of Meng. Meng lowered his head and caught the great general in his mouth before placing it on his back. The great general chirped for a while. Meng listened carefully. He then looked at Yang Kai and said, "Brat, take care. The 3 golden feathers seal contains my 3 divine technique. If you are in danger, you can activate it to defend yourself. We will meet again if fate allows." Then, a gust of wind blew. Everyone could not open their eyes. By the time they came back to their senses, Meng had already disappeared. The golden light in the distance was getting farther and farther away. 3 golden feathers were floating in front of Yang Kai. They looked like they were made of pure gold. There were no impurities in them. Yang Kai was stunned. He did not expect Meng to leave him with such benefits before he left. It was probably the great general's last request. Before he left, the great general must have communicated something with Meng. Yang Kai grabbed the 3 golden feathers and stuffed them into his space ring. Looking in the direction Meng left, He raised his hand and waved goodbye. In this vast universe, after this farewell, it was likely they would never meet again. Old Fang stared at Yang Kai's ring with a fiery gaze. Although he didn't know what the 3 golden feathers Miemeng left behind before he left, they were obviously not ordinary things. Swallowing his saliva, he asked, "What did Senior Miemeng say to you just now?" When Miemeng and Yang Kai had communicated just now, they had used divine sense transmissions. Old Fang and the others could not hear them at all. "Nothing much, just thanking me for helping her escape," Yang Kai casually replied. Looking around at everyone, he chuckled and asked, "Where should we go now?" The 4 of them could be considered newcomers to the outside world. Although Old Fang and Dai Yu had arrived earlier, they had stayed in the Kikichiao land for many years and had not been to other places. Their understanding of the outside world was not much better than Yang Kai and our Sunday previously. With the Great General leading the way, everyone at least had a goal, but now that the Great General had left, they really had nowhere to go. They all felt like headless flies. Our son asked weakly from the side, "Do you want to go somewhere with me?" Yang Kai turned to look at her and asked, "Where to?" "Great Moon Province," our son said with a guilty expression. "What is that place?" Yang Kai was puzzled. Old Fang looked at our son thoughtfully and said slowly, "Outside the world, there are countless forces, big and small. If these forces are divided into 3 levels, the top ones are the 36 grotto heavens and the 72 blessed lands, which are guarded by upper-level heaven splitters. Below these grotto heavens and blessed lands, there are second-tier forces like the Kikichiao land, which are guarded by middle-level heaven splitters. Further down, there are many spiritual states, which do not have upper-level heaven splitters or middle-level heaven splitters. This Great Moon Province should be one of them." Our son shook her head and said, "I'm not sure, but it should be." Old Fang chuckled and said, "It seems that Miss Sun has some background. Otherwise, how would you know about a place like the Great Moon Province?" Our son couldn't help but stick out her tongue and said, "There is a senior in the Great Moon Province, and I just want to join her." Yang Kai asked curiously, "Our son, didn't you say that the world you came from has collapsed and perished, and that you are the only one left?" When he first met our son, she did say that, and Yang Kai remembered it clearly. Our son said, "Yes, that world has indeed collapsed and perished, and I am the only one left. However, a few hundred years ago, a senior from that world went back once." These words sounded familiar. Fang Tai seemed to have said the same thing. "That senior left me a token, and told me that if I ever went outside the world, I could use this token to find her." These words sounded even more familiar. Yang Kai was speechless. However, unlike Fang Tai had taken out the token and showed it to Duan Hai, while our son had kept it a secret. Judging from the current results, our son's approach was undoubtedly correct. The reason Fang Tai died was because he assisted Zhu Zheng and Xiong Yong in stealing the spirit fruit, but it was also because of his background. Just think about it, if that powerful master from the Black River realm learned that Fang Tai, a junior, had been recruited by the 7 openings to work as a servant, he would definitely not let this matter go. Therefore, Duan Hai had asked him to hunt down Fang Tai to prevent future trouble. If our son had done what Fang Tai had done at that time, she might have suffered the same fate. Saying so, our son took out a small fox. This fox was about the size of a palm and seemed to be made from some unknown spirit jade. Its entire body was white and crystal clear, and it had a lifelike appearance, as if it was a living creature. "Can we find the Great Moon Province with this?" Yang Kai was puzzled. Old Fang said, "I think that senior must have left a guide in this token." Yang Kai suddenly remembered the jade token left behind by Fang Tai. It was estimated that the function of the 2 items was the same. Both items had a guide inside them, and by relying on the guidance of these tokens, Yang Kai could find his location. That thing was still in Yang Kai's sealed world bead, so it seemed he had to deal with it as soon as possible, otherwise it would become a problem. However, just getting rid of the token wasn't enough. There were still traces left on his body, and if he didn't get rid of them, once he encountered that powerful master from the Black River realm, the other party would definitely know he was the one who killed Fang Tai. "Since you have a place to go, why didn't you mention it before? Why did you follow us?" Dai Yu looked at her son and asked. Our son stuck out her tongue again. I didn't dare to run around outside this world by myself, and I didn't know what kind of temperament you had before, now you know? Dayu chuckled. Our son hugged Dayu's arm and grinned. In any case, you're not bad people. Dayu glanced at Yang Kai helplessly. Yang Kai said, it's always right to be careful when you're outside. What do you think? Old Fang shrugged and said, I don't have any ideas, we'll go wherever we want. Dayu said, it's up to you. We'll go wherever you want. The two of them left the decision to Yang Kai. Our son understood and immediately came to Yang Kai's side, pulled his arm, and shook it vigorously. Brother Yang, come with me. Our son really doesn't dare to run around alone. After we get there, if you think it's appropriate, you can also stay. My senior seems to have some authority in Great Moon Province, so it shouldn't be a problem for him to take in a few people. Don't make promises for others so casually. Yang Kai laughed and pondered for a while before saying, okay, stop shaking me. We have nowhere to go anyway, so I'll go with you. Our son was overjoyed. Thank you, Brother Yang. Old Fang said faintly, you're thanking only him? Our son said with a smile, thank you, Brother Fang, and senior sister Dayu. Old Fang nodded, that's more like it. Yang Kai said, but if we really go there, we don't know if we'll stay or not. We have to see what's going on there. Our son kept nodding, our son knows, but brother and senior sister, don't worry. If you really want to stay, you won't be a handyman. Let's go. Yang Kai raised his hand and knocked her on the head. Our son didn't seem to care. She held the white jade fox in her palm and her face suddenly became solemn. She muttered something, but no one knew what she was muttering. Then, her strength surged and poured into the fox. A white silhouette suddenly shot out from our son's palm and turned into a 2-feet-long three-tailed fox. The fox turned its head and looked at everyone with its human-like eyes. Then, it started to run at a very fast speed. Needless to say, the fox was showing them the direction of Great Moon Province. Keep up! Yang Kai shouted in a low voice, and the four of them immediately followed the fox. Fortunately, the fox was running in the same direction as the crowd. In other words, they didn't waste time and journey when they accompanied the general to save his mother. Now, they were just continuing the previous path. The road ahead was long. The four of them followed the fox closely and ran into the depths of the universe. Chapter 3896. They didn't know where the Great Moon Province was, but as they followed the guide, a month passed by in a flash. The fox-shaped guide was still leading the way, but no one knew how long it would take. In the beginning, everyone's state of mind was still calm, but as time passed, they couldn't help but become impatient, especially our Sunday. She even began to doubt whether the guide given to her by that senior was useful or not. Otherwise, how could they not reach their destination after walking for so long? Until one day, a territory gate appeared in front of them, stretching across the void. The fox guide rushed straight towards the territory gate, but when it approached, it suddenly stopped and turned back to look at everyone. It looks like we'll have to pass through this territory gate. Yang Kai said thoughtfully. He was no stranger to territory gates. He had passed through them several times when he followed Duan Hai to the Chichiaoland, but passing through a territory gate required great strength. If one didn't have enough strength, it was very likely they would encounter danger. Could the few of them really do it? They couldn't go in vertically and come out horizontally. Not only did he think so, but Old Fang and the others obviously also had this concern, so they all stopped and frowned as they looked forward. Right at this moment, the fox, Lu Yin, suddenly shook its body and transformed into a layer of white light that enveloped everyone. The group looked at each other and their faces lit up with joy. They knew that our son's senior had obviously considered this and knew that with our son's strength, there was no way she could pass through the territory gate. This guide actually had a protective function. Without needing to communicate, the four of them rushed into the territory gate. A feeling of dizziness hit them and their vision blurred as they found themselves in another large territory. The scenery around the starfield had changed, and in that instant, they had crossed an unknown distance. After passing through the territory gate, the white light wrapped around everyone once again condensed into the shape of a fox, but at this moment, The fox was no longer as plump as before and had instead become extremely dim. It seemed that the consumption of its strength was not small. As always, with the fox guide in front and the four behind, they continued to fly forward. Another half a month later, the fox guide once again stopped in front of a territory gate. With their previous experience, everyone was familiar with the process. After they gathered together, the fox guidance turned into a layer of white light and enveloped everyone. Yang Kai took the lead and led the other three into the territory gate. However, this time, they were not as lucky as last time. When they entered the territory gate, Yang Kai immediately felt a tearing force coming from all directions. The layer of white light that enveloped everyone quickly dimmed. Yang Kai was shocked and knew that this was bad. This fox guide was given to her by our son's predecessor to guide her to the Great Moon Prefecture. That predecessor probably didn't expect that our son would not go alone, but with 3 other people. In this way, when going through the territory gate, the consumption of the guide would be several times greater. The Great Moon state was only a spiritual state. According to Old Fang's classification, it was the lowest level force in the world outside the universe. The strongest person inside was only at the 3rd stage Sky Splitter. Presumably, the strength of our son's predecessor was also limited. The guide's function naturally couldn't be that powerful. After going through the territory gate twice, the guide's power was almost exhausted. "Don't resist," Yang Kai shouted in a low voice. He stretched out his hand and summoned the Rui pouch, covering our son and the others with it. Our son and the other 2 obviously noticed that something was wrong with the guide. When they saw Yang Kai's actions, they quickly understood and immediately relaxed. A figure flashed and the 3 of them were put into the Rui pouch. With 3 people gone, the speed at which the white light enveloping them dimmed slowed down a lot. However, it still quickly dimmed. Yang Kai was on tenterhooks. He didn't know what would happen to him if he didn't have the protection of the guide. He could only secretly pray that they could quickly pass through the territory gate. In the distorted spacetime, a faint light appeared in front of them. Yang Kai's spirit was shaken. He hurriedly urged the law of space and rushed in that direction. After what seemed like an instant and what seemed like a long time, Yang Kai felt his vision change. He had already rushed out of the territory gate. When he looked back, there was nothing in the void. This territory gate was the same as the realm gate in the demon territory. They were all one way, but perhaps there were 2-way ones as well. It was just that he hadn't encountered them yet. Looking down, the white light enveloping him had disappeared. Yang Kai was speechless. He released our son and the other 2 from the Rui pouch. Our son asked, "What about the fox?" Yang Kai shook his head. Our son's pretty face changed. She hurriedly took out the token that her predecessor had left her. The palm-sized white jade fox was now dim and covered in cracks. It seemed like it would break at the slightest touch. Needless to say, this token couldn't be activated. Our son. Yang Kai felt a headache coming on. "We may have implicated you." If our son was alone, the power of the travel permit should be enough to lead her safely to the Great Moon Province. However, there were suddenly 3 more people. The consumption of traveling through the territory gate was too great. Now, before they reached the Great Moon Province, the travel permit was gone. This was quite embarrassing. Our son was absent-minded for a while. She obviously didn't expect this to happen. The reason why she invited Yang Kai and the others to accompany her to the Great Moon Province was that she felt that Yang Kai and the others were not bad people. The second reason was that, as she said, she didn't dare to run around outside the universe. She had just condensed a Dao seal. If she really encountered any danger, she wouldn't be able to resist. Holding the white jade fox, our son forced a smile and shook her head. "It's not your fault. I asked you to accompany me. What do we do now?" Dayu looked at Yang Kai and asked. It wasn't easy to find a destination. Now, the travel permit was gone and the destination was gone. Yang Kai pondered and said, "The guidance of the travel permit should be correct. Since it brought us here, it means that the Great Moon Province is in this direction. But we don't know if the Great Moon Province is in this territory. If it is, we may have a chance to find it. If not, It will be troublesome. Now, it's better to ask someone. Old Fang smiled bitterly. How can we find anyone? We've wandered around outside for several months, but we haven't even seen a shadow of a person. That's because we haven't looked for it. In any large territory, there must be big or small forces. As long as we have the heart, we can always find it. What if the forces here are the same as the Chichao land? Then we're out of luck. Yang Kai shrugged. As they were talking, they suddenly saw a flash of light from the corner of their eyes. Yang Kai turned his head but saw nothing. He couldn't help but frown. Just as he was wondering if it was an illusion, Dai said, "Did you see it?" "You saw it too?" Yang Kai asked. Dai nodded. Something flashed. It was very far away. Old Fang craned his neck and looked in that direction, puzzled. Where did that flash? Did you see it wrong? Yang Kai shook his head. One person may see it wrong, but two people can't. Something must have flashed over there. Why didn't I see it? Hey! Old Fang suddenly exclaimed and pointed in that direction. Look over there. Can you see something? Seeing him act as if he had discovered something, Kai Yang and the others were all surprised. Looking in the direction he was pointing, they didn't see anything at first, but when Kai Yang focused his vision and continued to look forward, his eyes couldn't help but shrink. He could actually see a house in the distant void. Blinking hard, Yang Kai confirmed that there was indeed a house there. This house wasn't very big, and there seemed to be two large flags standing at the door, fluttering in the void. Dai and our son obviously also saw it and both showed surprised expressions. Miniature universe. Yang Kai frowned. When he met Duanhai before, the door to Duanhai's miniature universe was just a door standing in the void. Now that he saw this house, he couldn't help thinking about it. I don't know, Old Fang shook his head and asked, should we go and take a look? Dai and our son didn't speak and just looked at Yang Kai, waiting for him to make a decision. Yang Kai looked around and chuckled, it's already like this. It's rare to meet living people, so if we don't go, they will definitely be unwilling. However, we don't know what the situation is like over there for the time being. Let's observe from a distance first before making a decision. The three of them nodded together, very good. After making up their minds, the group of four flew over, but they didn't get too close. Stopping at a distance, they quietly concealed their auras and observed the situation. At first glance, they found something strange. There were actually people going in and out of the house. Although there weren't many people going in and out, it was still surprising to see so many people in this vast world. Of those people going in and out, some were in groups while others were alone. It wasn't clear how strong they were, but it was likely that not all of them had reached the heavens realm. There were definitely some like Yang Kai and the others who had condensed their own Dao seals and were on the path to the heavens realm. Little brother, look at that flag, there are words on it. Old Fang suddenly said. With his reminder, Yang Kai noticed that there was indeed a large word on the flag erected in front of the house. Looking carefully, he found that the flag on the left had the word wine on it. The flag on the right had the words the first inn on it. Yang Kai's expression couldn't help but become strange. Dai said, why does this place look like an inn? Our son's eyes widened. It can't be. Old Fang's mouth twitched. It's really possible. Yang Kai said thoughtfully, there are all kinds of strange things in this world. There are people going in and out of that place, and there are also two large flags. If this isn't an inn, then what is it? Who built an inn here? Old Fang still couldn't believe it. Besides, what kind of business could be built here? Did they expect passers-by to stay and eat? Whether it's true or not, we'll know once we go and take a look. Yang Kai gritted his teeth and looked at the others. Chapter 3897. After a short while, the group of four arrived in front of what seemed to be an inn. Outside the room was a flat area with two large banners inserted into the ground. There was no wind, but the banners were fluttering in the wind. Now Yang Kai and the others really had no place to go, and they were unfamiliar with this world. Most importantly, their strength was not very high, so it was rare for them to come across such a place like this one, so they naturally wanted to take a look. It would be best if they could find out where Great Moon Province was. Old Fang felt uneasy. Brother, this isn't a scam, is it? Yang Kai glanced back at him and chuckled. If it really is a scam, I'm afraid it's too late to leave now. Hearing this, Old Fang's face paled. Looking up at the two large banners, before they could figure out what they were, a person inside the inn came out with a smile. Honored guests, please come in. Yang Kai turned his head and saw a man dressed like a manservant nodding and bowing to him, a white cloth draped over his shoulder. He looked no different from the innkeeper Yang Kai had seen before. Yang Kai couldn't help but fall into a trance, subconsciously sweeping out with his divine sense to investigate the other party's cultivation. The result made Yang Kai extremely stunned. He couldn't see through the strength of this innkeeper at all. This guy was nodding and bowing with a smile on his face, but it was as if he didn't exist at all, which was extremely strange. Yang Kai guessed that the other party should be using some kind of artifact to hide his cultivation. Otherwise, even if a heaven-opening realm master stood in front of him, he would be able to sense it. Since they were already here, it was naturally impossible for them to leave, so Yang Kai nodded lightly and led the group into the inn. From the outside, this inn didn't look strange, just a red-walled, blue-tiled building, but after entering, they discovered that there was actually something special about this inn. The lobby of the inn was not small, with more than 20 tables set up. Not only that, there was also a second floor. The hall was bustling with noise. More than 20 tables were almost full, and the guests at those tables were dressed differently. Some of them seemed to be from the same faction because their clothes were very similar, while others were different. However, they were obviously from the same group. There was a counter at the entrance. Behind the counter, a man who looked like a bookkeeper was fiddling with a golden abacus, making crackling sounds. In the lobby, waiters came and went, serving plates of exquisite dishes, the aroma wafting in the air. When Yang Kai and the others entered, the accountant looked up and ignored them, continuing to fiddle with the abacus in front of him. The manservant who led Yang Kai picked up the white cloth on his shoulder and asked while wiping the table, "Honored guests, what would you like to eat?" "What's there to eat?" Yang Kai turned his head and looked around, asking absent-mindedly. The manservant proudly, "Honored guests, to be honest, to eat, to eat?" Old Fang chuckled. "You can even make dragon liver and phoenix gall?" The manservant said, "We do have that, but you'll have to wait for a while. We don't have any in stock. If you're not in a hurry, you can stay here for 3 to 5 years. We'll definitely find it for you." The corner of Old Fang's mouth twitched. Really? Yang Kai also widened his eyes. What kind of place was this? How could they even find dragon liver and phoenix gall? The manservant said, "Whether it's true or not, it depends on whether you have the patience." He put the white cloth on his shoulder and continued, "But the first inn has always been honest, or else we wouldn't be able to do business." Yang Kai coughed lightly and said, "There's no need for dragon liver and phoenix gall. Just order some of our signature dishes and a few pots of wine. Please wait a moment, we'll be right there," the manservant said, then turned around and left. This really is an inn. After the manservant left, Old Fang looked around and secretly transmitted his voice to Yang Kai, his tone full of disbelief. Yang Kai nodded. "It doesn't look like a scam. Maybe we can ask the manservant for some information later and ask if the Great Moon Prefecture is in this territory." Our son's eyes lit up when she heard this, and she nodded repeatedly. We must ask, we must ask." The lobby was still lively. Yang Kai coldly observed and sensed the auras of many heaven-opening realm masters. There were many heaven-opening realm masters in the lobby, but there were also some who, like them, had condensed a Dao seal but had not yet reached the heaven-opening realm. After observing, Yang Kai felt a lot more relieved. This was not a scam, and the cultivation levels of the people entering and exiting were also different. As such, they did not have to worry about their safety. The efficiency of the first inn was very high. After waiting for half a cup of tea's time, the manservant brought up the dishes. There were 4 people, 4 exquisite side dishes, a pot of soup, and 2 pots of wine. They did not know what the side dishes were made of, but they looked very appetizing. As soon as they were presented, their appetites were greatly stimulated. Our son was constantly swallowing her saliva, as if she had not eaten for hundreds of years. "The dishes are ready," Please enjoy. The manservant said and was about to leave. Yang Kai raised his hand and said, "Second brother, don't be in such a hurry to leave. Can I ask you for some information?" The manservant turned around and said with a smile, "The first inn is a place where all kinds of information converge. Naturally, you can also buy or sell information, depending on what you want to ask." Buy or sell information? Yang Kai frowned. "Is there a fee?" The manservant said, "There is no such thing as a free lunch in this world. No matter what kind of information it is valuable in the first inn." "How much is the fee?" "That depends on what you want to ask. Some information is very cheap, while others are very expensive." Yang Kai didn't know what to say about this kind of business, but thinking about it, it was not strange. In this vast world, it was not easy to find someone to inquire about information. Since this manservant was able to do this, it was his own ability. "I only want to ask about the location of a certain force," Yang Kai said. "Which force?" "Great Moon Province." The manservant stretched out his hand. 100 heaven-opening pills. Old Fang almost spat out the wine in his mouth. 100 heaven-opening pills? Why don't you just rob someone?" Thinking about how he was only paid a few heaven-opening pills a year as a handyman in the Seven Openings land, but now, asking for 100 just for some information was simply unimaginable. Looking at the wine and food in front of him, he couldn't help gulping. If asking for information was so expensive, just how much would this table of wine and food cost? He subconsciously covered his space ring. The manservant always had a smile on his face. "Whether you want to ask or not is up to you." Yang Kai nodded, took out 100 heaven-opening pills from his space ring, and handed them to the manservant. The manservant took them and casually returned a jade slip to Yang Kai. "The location of Great Moon Province is here, please check it for yourself." Yang Kai poured his divine sense into the jade slip and immediately saw what appeared to be a star. Carefully identifying it, Yang Kai found his current location and the location of Great Moon Province. After silently calculating for a moment, he couldn't help smacking his lips. "How is it?" Our son asked nervously. Yang Kai handed the jade slip to her and said, "It's not in this territory. We still have to pass through 2 territory gates to reach the territory where Great Moon Province is located." Our son investigated and found that it was indeed as Yang Kai said, Great Moon Province was not in this territory. If she wanted to go there, she would have to continue on her way, causing her to feel a little discouraged. Yang Kai raised his head, looked at the manservant, and asked, "How do we pass through the territory gates?" Saying so, he handed over another 100 heaven-opening pills. The manservant replied, "Mid-rank heaven-opening pills allow you to pass through at will, but below mid-rank heaven-opening pills, you'll have to buy those flight-type artifacts with defensive functions, which are sold in every star market." "Is there a star market here? Where is it?" Another 100 heaven-opening pills were handed over. The manservant handed Yang Kai another jade slip. "Follow the directions here and you'll be able to reach it within a month." Needless to say, this was another roadmap. "Have several guests just arrived outside this world?" the manservant suddenly asked. There was no need to hide this, and the questions Yang Kai just asked were all common sense, so others could easily infer this point, so Yang Kai nodded and said, "Yes." "Is that so?" The manservant pondered for a moment. "Guests have asked me 3 questions, so I'll give you some information." "Many thanks." Yang Kai cupped his fists. The manservant said, "Let's talk about our first inn first. Our first inn's business extends throughout this world, and we have branches in every large territory. In the future, if guests encounter any unsolvable problems, such as being hunted down by enemies, they can come to our first inn to take refuge. Inside the first inn, no one is allowed to use force, otherwise, they will have to bear the consequences." Yang Kai was surprised. "You can take refuge here?" The manservant smiled meaningfully. "Everyone who comes is a guest, and since you're a guest, our first inn naturally has to protect your safety. If something happens to guests in the inn, how can we do business?" He spoke lightly, but Yang Kai heard something different. He originally thought that this was just an inn, but now it seemed that there was definitely a huge background behind it, otherwise, he wouldn't dare to say such words. One had to know that outside this world, There was no lack of heaven-opening realm existences. As for the Great Moon Prefecture, the manservant smiled lightly. Guests don't need to go to the Great Moon Prefecture. Just wait here for a while, and perhaps you'll see someone from the Great Moon Prefecture. Why is that? Our son hurriedly asked. Because something happened here. So many people from various forces have come. The manservant pointed to the lobby. Otherwise, how could there be so many people here? What happened? Yang Kai was very curious, guessing that something big must have happened, otherwise, it wouldn't have attracted so many people. The manservant pondered for a moment and sighed. Forget it, since you're new here, you probably don't have much money, so I'll give you this information. He handed a jade slip to Yang Kai and shook the white cloth on his shoulder. Enjoy, if you need anything, just call me. Chapter 3898. After taking a few steps, he turned back and said, by the way, our first inn not only sells information, but also buys information. If any guests have any useful information in the future, they can come to our first inn to sell it, as well as rare treasures. Our first inn has always been honest when doing business. The manservant withdrew and the three of them stared at the space ring on Yang Kai's hand. Our son asked, what happened here? Why did that person say that as long as we waited here, we might see people from the Great Moon Province? Yang Kai slowly shook his head and immersed his consciousness into the jade slip. After a short while, his brow rose as a look of shock appeared on his face. Glancing over at Old Fang and the others, he handed the jade slip to them. Take a look as well. The jade slip passed through the hands of the three of them, and without exception, all three of them were shocked speechless. The sun is about to die. Yu asked thoughtfully, so, the dazzling light we caught a glimpse of before was the final radiance of the sun star? Yang Kai nodded, it should be. When they had left the territory gate earlier, both he and Yu had noticed a dazzling flash of light in the distance, but it had only lasted for a short time. At the time, they hadn't understood what was going on, but now that they had read the contents of the jade slip, they realized that it was the final radiance of a sun star before it was about to be extinguished. A sun star on the brink of destruction was a major matter no matter where it was. If that was all, it wouldn't have attracted so many forces to investigate. The crux of the matter was that sun stars contained something like sun true gold. Normally, even heaven-opening experts would be unable to ascend a sun star, as the terrifying heat was enough to make them shrink back. However, a sun star on the brink of destruction was different. As long as they waited for the right opportunity, anyone could ascend and investigate. The sun's true gold was at least a 6th-grade heaven-opening material, and it was also of the fire attribute. Not to mention, it was rumored that there was an existence called the Golden Crow Divine Palace on the Sun Star. The Golden Crow was about to die, so the Sun Star would also perish. Men die for wealth and birds die for food. This was a truth since ancient times. If there were no benefits here, how could so many people be attracted to it? Whether it was the sun's true gold that might be nurtured on the Sun Star or the Golden Crow Divine Palace that might not exist at all, they were enough to attract all the great forces in the nearby territory. The first inn's business, otherwise, how could there be so many people coming here to stay and drink? Sun's true gold, old Fang, if I can obtain a piece, I won't have to worry the rest of my life. According to the jade slip, the sun true gold was at least a grade 6 heaven-opening material. That was something worth 15 million heaven-opening pills. Moreover, it was priceless. If it were to be sold, it could be easily sold for tens of millions of heaven-opening pills. Yu pursed her lips and said, even if you can get it, I'm afraid you won't be able to enjoy it. Now, all the great forces in the nearby territory were gathered here, staring at the sun star that was about to perish. It was conceivable that once the sun's fire was extinguished, countless people would go to search for it. With their strength, even if they were lucky enough to find the sun's true gold, they might not be able to bring it out alive. Hearing Yu's words, Old Fang's face darkened. He punched hard and said, damn it. Opportunities are hard to predict. We may have a chance. Yang Kai chuckled. And anyway, we have to stay here and see if we can meet the people from the Great Moon Province. Our son nodded vigorously. Compared with crossing the 2 territory gates to the headquarters of the Great Moon Province, it was undoubtedly easier to wait here. If they were lucky, they might meet the people from the Great Moon Province. At that time, our son could go and meet them. You're right. Then, let's try our luck. Old Fang looked at Yang Kai inquiringly. Yang Kai nodded and said, "That's all we can do." After the discussion was settled, the 4 of them immediately relaxed. They drank and ate, chatting about anything under the sun. It had to be said that this first inn had an excellent chef, and the food he made was delicious. The 4 of them finished all the dishes on the table, leaving nothing behind. After calling the waiter over to settle the bill, Yang Kai's hands trembled when he saw that it was 200 heaven-opening pills. Although he had made a small fortune from the dead people before, receiving hundreds of thousands of heaven-opening pills, he was afraid he wouldn't be able to last much longer if he continued to spend like this. He asked the waiter when the sun's star would extinguish, but the waiter said he didn't know. This situation had been going on for 3 years now, so it would take at least a few more months to see the result. After all, the death of a sun star was not something that could be seen in a short time. Left with no choice, they could only stay here. The accommodation was also very expensive. A room cost 500 heaven-opening pills a day and a night, and there was no bargaining. However, there was an advantage to staying here, which was that they provided free food. Whether you ate or not, the price was still there. Originally, they wanted to get a room and squeeze in with the 4 of them. Anyway, they didn't need to sleep. They stayed here mainly to wait for the people from the Great Moon Province, and secondly, to see the situation of the sun star. If there was a chance, Yang Kai wouldn't mind getting involved. Unexpectedly, the waiter didn't agree. The waiter told Yang Kai that a room here could only accommodate 2 people at most, and he would have to get a new room if there were more. Since they were in other people's territory, they naturally had to abide by their rules. They had no choice but to get 2 rooms, 1 for each man, and 1 for Dayu, a girl. In total, they had to spend 1,000 heaven-opening pills a day. Our son had no idea about this number, but Larofang and Dayu felt their hearts bleed. They both tried to persuade Yang Kai to wait outside. Yang Kai didn't agree. Their strength was too low, and at least their safety was guaranteed if they stayed in the first inn. If they really stayed outside, no one knew what would happen. Now that there were people coming and going outside all day, who knew if they would encounter some evil people? The waiter led Yang Kai to the counter to get the room card, and then politely escorted the 4 of them into the inner courtyard. Before leaving, Yang Kai asked him to pay more attention to the news of the Great Moon Province, and to inform him if someone from the Great Moon Province came. The waiter agreed without hesitation. The 2 rooms were next to each other. In this way, if something really happened, it would be convenient for them to take care of each other. They agreed to meet once every 3 days, and then go to inquire about the news. Yang Kai and Larofang entered the room and looked around. The room was not big, with only a bed, a table, and a chair. It was barely enough for 2 people, but it would be too crowded for 4 people. Larofang said, "Brother, you sleep on the bed. I'll sleep on the floor." The money for the room was paid for by Yang Kai, so Larofang was too embarrassed to compete with him, let alone compete. Yang Kai didn't bother to be polite with him. He sat cross-legged on the bed, took out the shadowless gauze, and silently refined it. The matter of the sun star involved too many people, and all forces had gathered here. If he really wanted to get involved, it would be too difficult for him to do so with his current strength. Thus, the shadowless gauze was very important. Yang Kai had been refining it during the journey, but it seemed to be of a high grade, so refining it was a little troublesome, so he hadn't completely refined it until now. At this time, it was naturally more important to refine it quickly. At a critical moment, this thing might be able to save his life. Time flew by, and 3 days passed. At the appointed time, the 4 of them walked out of their rooms and met in the lobby. They chatted while inquiring about the news from all sides. There was nothing special. The people from the Great Moon State had not arrived yet, and the sun star was still in a half-dead state. From time to time, it would erupt with dazzling light, and no one knew when the sun's fire would be extinguished. After eating and drinking for a while, they didn't need to pay. Anyway, It was all included in the room fee, so they went their separate ways. For the next 3 months, the 4 of them stayed in the first inn and had become regular customers here. The room price was 1,000 heaven opening pills a day, so in 1 month it would be 30,000, so in 3 months it would be 90,000. Yang Kai's wallet shrank by nearly half. Every 3 days, they would meet, but after staying here for 3 months, they didn't get any information they wanted, which was really discouraging. However, they became familiar with the servants and the cashier at the counter. If they wanted to inquire about something, they could give them a discount. Yang Kai also found that there was a mysterious landlady in the first inn. He had only seen her 3 times in 3 months. She was a charming woman, smiling all day long. Every time she came out of the backyard, she would go to the tables and say a few words to the guests, asking them how they ate and how they lived. She was a person who knew how to dance. There were all kinds of guests coming and going. When they saw the landlady's outstanding appearance, they would casually tease her. The landlady didn't get angry, and instead, she would talk and laugh with them. However, Yang Kai saw with his own eyes a fellow who wanted to take advantage of the landlady. As a result, he was casually thrown out of the first inn by the landlady, and even the people from that faction were chased out. Moreover, they could no longer enter the first inn. Not only this first inn, but the entire first inn outside of this universe would not accept them. It was also at that time that Yang Kai vaguely saw the landlady's strength. At the very least, she was a mid-rank heaven opening pill. As for what mid-rank she was, Yang Kai couldn't tell. Thinking about it, no matter how great the background behind the first inn was, for a branch to be opened here, there would definitely be a powerhouse overseeing it. Only then would they be able to deter some small fry. During these 3 months, although he hadn't obtained any information, Yang Kai wasn't without any gains. The shadowless yarn had been completely refined, and now he was refining the 6 Harmonies Rui pouch. However, the 6 Harmonies Rui pouch from Elder Shu was of a higher grade than the shadowless yarn, so refining it was naturally more difficult. Fortunately, in order to get Yang Kai to bring him into the Chichiao lands, Elder Shu had specially taught him a refining method. Furthermore, Elder Shu had also helped Yang Kai refine it once, so Yang Kai was able to quickly learn it. It wouldn't take long for him to completely refine it. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.